What's up, Internet? You're tuned into episode 150 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where three best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friends and co-hosts, Mr. Steven Radford.
Hello, hello.
And Mr. Max Wright.
Happy century and a half, everybody.
Happy century and a half, everybody. Thank you all so much for 150 episodes of the FlipScreen Games Podcast. We are so happy to be here, and we have a very special episode planned for you today. To celebrate episode 150, we wanted to do something special that we thought would be a great way to celebrate the thing that brings us all here together every week, which is, of course, our love of video games. So we are going to be creating our top 100 games you must play before you die, according to your friends here at FlipScreen Games. So, Steve, this was based on an idea that you had, so I'm going to throw it to you so you can just break down how we came to this decision for the celebration.
Yeah, so this is based on like the best lists that you'll see on IGN or Kotaku. This isn't necessarily the best games of all time. This is more a list of our favorite games and gives you a flavor of what we enjoy. And it's games that we think you should spend your time with. And I think hopefully we're going to have a very, very broad representation between the three of us because we have very different tastes in games, but it should give you an idea of what we like to play.
Yeah, and I think, this is kind of the 100 games that we think are worth your limited time on this earth. Spend a little bit of time with them if you want our taste on it. And this is like a great evergreen episode that if you're a new listener, if you're first time joining us, you can always jump in here and get an idea of a snapshot of our tastes. So to get the list started, what we decided we were going to do is we each made a personal list of 100 games, and then we started the list by cross-referencing all of those games. So any game that appeared on at least two of our lists is an automatic lock on the list.
And then that's like, if they appeared on all three lists, they're up there at the top of the rankings, right? They're the best games ever. How many did we cross over with in the end? How many we started with?
So we ended up with 33 games overall. We'll break down the crossover and how that happened in a minute when we get through the rules here. But we're going to start with 33 games on the list, and then we're going to have to rank an additional 67. And how we're going to do that is we're going to take turns going around in a circle, pitching a new game for the list, and each of us will have like a few sentences to explain why we think the game deserves to be on the list. And then the other two panelists will have the opportunity to either advocate for that game's inclusion or to argue against its inclusion. And as long as it gets signed on by another panelist, it makes itself onto the list.
You only got to convince one of you.
Hey,
Matt,
that's a majority.
Alliance,
Yeah,
me and you.
Yeah, we'll get into the data in a second, and we'll see how poor a plan that is, because both of you have far more in common with me than with each other. But you're not prepared for that data revelation yet, are you? So the other thing that you'll be able to do is you can offer a counter pick at that time and make a case for why a different similar game should be included instead. So, for example, if Steve said Far Cry 4 should be on the list, but I had Far Cry 3 on my list, I could make a case for why my game should be included instead. And then Max, as the third impartial panelist there, will get the opportunity to judge which game would be included on the list based on our arguments. Now,
Yep. Also, 4 is a higher number than 3, so
you can't beat math like that. But the judge does have the option to decide that both games should be included. But then, of course, that does limit another turn later. So that is one of those things where if you have a bunch of games that you still want to argue for, that's not a decision that should be taken lightly as a judge. So, and then finally,
we have to self-report. Sorry, we have to self-report. If you say Far Cry 3, but I've got Far Cry 4 at the bottom of my list and we haven't got to it yet, we've got to self-report and say, I have that, to save us getting down to the bottom and going, I said Far Cry 4 earlier. Oh no, we have to have the whole discussion again. Yada yada.
Yeah. We can't be relitigating old arguments. So you gotta Scout's honor, bring it up, unless your plan is to just lock it in, which is also acceptable, right? You could do that. So, just to keep things, in the interest of maintaining integrity of the list, but also keeping things fun on the show, we have a couple game mechanics that we've agreed upon. So each one of us is going to have 5 locks. So what a lock is that means that game's guaranteed to be included on the list, regardless of your argument, regardless of how the other panelists feel. And that way you can ensure that at least 5 games from each of us, right, that we feel must be included are going to end up on that final list. And because there's only 5, that encourages a little bit of metagaming, right, where it encourages you to do your best pitching for a game so that you don't have to waste a lock on it. And then, it also makes it so that no other panelist, I'm sorry, that none of us should walk away feeling like a game that like absolutely represents our taste that needs to be on the list got snubbed, right? You have the opportunity to put it forward. If it didn't make it on the list, it's because you decided it wasn't important enough to be on the list. Now, on the flip side, we'll also each have a veto. So what that means is that we'll be able to cancel out a game that another person wants to put forward, and it will not make it on the list. But a veto cannot cancel a lock. So I can't cancel your lock game unless the 2 panelists team up together to veto that game, in which case you'd have to use 2 of your locks to protect it.
I wasn't expecting all these rules. What if when you do a veto, the other player's like, well, hang on a minute, but what about this? And it's sort of like they have a case against the veto. Is that overcomplicating it too much, or is a veto?
You can argue against the veto if you want, but it's up to that player to then be like, fair enough, and pull it back. And the only other kind of thing that can happen there is you won't lose your veto if somebody comes in to save it. So, like, if I veto a game, then you decide it's a lock, I get my veto back. It's only considered used once you've burned it on a game.
Okay.
Good. So then the last thing that we got to keep in mind is that in the interest of time, we are not going to be ranking these games today because we will never get through it, and this will be a 5-hour episode of the show. So we're reserving the right to return to that at a later date, and, we can either do an episode where we rank it ourselves. We could maybe throw them in some kind of crazy bracket. We could have you, the listeners, vote. I'd love to hear from you guys on what you want to see us do with this list once it's made after the fact, because I think there's a lot of fun things we could do with it. So, any questions before we get going, boys?
No, I'm ready.
No, I'd like to get started immediately, please.
Wonderful. All right. So, before we do that, I'm going to remind you that this episode of the FlipScreen Games Podcast would not have been possible without our Patreon supporters for the month of July. And some of you have been supporting since the very, very beginning. So thank you all so much for an incredible 150 episodes of the FlipScreen Games Podcast. There, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Sobe, Snackago, Steve Stompy, Susan Likes Cats and also Boobies, Voodoo Vic, Ty the Dude, and Waka Hula. Y'all are the best of the best, and we really appreciate your support. Let's get into it. So these are the top 33 games that we agreed upon that you need to play before you die. Okay. There are 6 games that were on all 3 lists. So, not a large game or large overlap, but a pretty interesting set of games that made it on this list. We had Balatro, BioShock, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Metroid Dread, Stardew Valley, and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Top 5 games of all time, baby.
6 games, but sure.
Top 6 games of all time, baby.
It's not bad. I think it's a pretty good cross section. A little Nintendo dominated,
very Nintendo heavy. Yeah,
That's not Nintendo heavy. There's only 3 out of 6. I guess that is
50%.
Yeah. Considering no other major console provider appears once on that list.
Yeah, I mean
2 indie games. I'm happy to see that.
2 indie games,
sure. Yeah. Pretty cool to see Balatro too, which is a brand new game, right? Like it's only came out this year, so that's pretty cool that it already made the cut. But yeah, I think this is a great 6 games to start off with. Dread was our game of the year a couple years ago, right? Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, one of the best, the best-selling game on the Nintendo Switch, right? Like we got good company here, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
I was surprised how many me and you had on our list together. Joint 13.
Yeah, it's because I am actually the tastemaker here. That's what I learned from this, is that I'm the one that think about it. I have 13 games in common with Steve. Steve and Max, 6 games in common. Pete and Max, 9 games in common.
In my defense, I was told 75 games. I brought 75 games. There's 25 games less for us to have in common. In my defense,
that only makes my case stronger because in 75 games, you and I had 9 in common.
Yeah, but I'm saying if I had like
if you had more, you might have had more in common with Steve. Sure, but you didn't. I'm just saying, I'm just saying,
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into the ones that we had in common, right? Steve and I had 13 games. They were Animal Crossing New Horizons, Crash Bandicoot, Disco Elysium, Doom 1993, so the original Doom, Fallout 4, Horizon Zero Dawn, Left 4 Dead, Persona 5, Super Mario Odyssey, Tell Me Why, The Last of Us, Undertale, and The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker.
Sorry, Super Mario Odyssey is also on my list. I just put Mario Odyssey, not Super Mario Odyssey. That should be a top 7.
We got a typo there. All right, so that's
yeah,
a
that's
top
me. I didn't realize you were gonna. I thought you were gonna do that yourself. Sorry, I didn't expect.
Yeah, you guys got me these lists like within 2 hours of recording.
Wind Waker is also on my list.
Okay, what else you got for me?
Hang on, I'm looking.
This is what Max tells us he likes Undertale.
I do like Undertale. It's not on my list.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the only 2 discrepancies there. Mario Odyssey and Wind Waker should be on both lists.
Okay. Well, honestly, that's fine. That's fine too, because honestly, it doesn't affect the percentage, right? It was one extra game in common with both of us, so that's fine.
Yeah.
So 8 games on our top list now, right? Great. So then, where did I leave us off? Was Undertale. Okay, so then between Steve and Max, we had 6 games, unless there was a typo. Bejeweled, Elden Ring, Hades, Metroid Fusion, Minecraft, and Portal.
I'm nervous now that there's going to be more of these, but hey ho, we move. Because if you come up with the game and I say it's on my list already, that's an instant get. So that's fine.
I mean, that's fine. Frankly, it'll just get us through the list quicker. So
yeah. Cool.
Not the end of the world for sure. But yeah, I did think it was interesting. You both had Bejeweled on there. Pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that was an early pick for me as well. I was like, what games surmise like? So I was looking at this like genres. What's like the best in genre? And when I think of like puzzle games, I'm like, that's Bejeweled right there.
I also wanted a selection of mobile games, so I got a few mobile games on my list that I was like, these are games that I would play anywhere. Bejeweled was one of them.
It is funny because there was one that I saw when I was going through the data myself, that Steve and I both have Tetris, but neither of us have committed to which version of Tetris yet. So that's not on the list because nobody's made a pitch for which one yet. We both add Tetris and then like in parentheses, this one? I don't know. Like,
can I just quickly, just one obvious oversight here for me is that I've also got Mario Galaxy, not Super Mario Galaxy. Should that appear in any lists now?
It's not on my list.
Either of you.
Not on
cool,
my list.
Fine. Let's go on. Let's move.
You're good. Okay. So then finally we have the games on both mine and Max's list, which is 9 games. That is, and I guess it's technically what, 10? Or, oh no, these are that are only on R2, right? So that's Batman Arkham Asylum, Celeste, God of War 2018, God of War Ragnarok, Kingdom Hearts 2, Marvel Snap, Spyro the Dragon, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and Shovel Knight. And that's the treasure trove. So it's like the all-encompassing version of Shovel Knight is what we're saying.
However, that is the only collection that will appear on this list because we've agreed
technically
to no collection.
Maybe.
Yeah, we agreed to not like trilogy games, right? Like not like the Master Chief collection so that you don't have to pick a Halo or like, whatever, right? Like you wouldn't say Mario All-Stars so that you could get 64 Sunshine and, whatever. That's obviously
why I spent 3 of my places on Metroid Prime games because the trilogy doesn't count.
Metroid Prime 4 is actually already on the list.
Yeah. Right, one last check before we actually move on. Steve, did you have Pokemon Go on your list, or did I make that up?
I do have Pokemon Go on my list.
That needs to go. That needs to go in here.
That one's there too. Okay. All right. So that brings you up to 7 there, and that brings our overall list to what? So it's 8.
It's just
19.
one more. Yeah.
Is it just okay?
It's 34 games now, so we just added one new one.
Cool. All right.
But we also added Super Mario Odyssey and Wind Waker, right?
We just moved that up, so I moved that, made that 8. So we're all up.
Okay, cool.
So
we're all
right.
Again, so now we have 66 games we need to pitch. That's correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, cool. Nice even number.
I have a feeling loads more of these are going to come up because I didn't use full punctuation when writing out some of these games.
We'll see what happens. That's fine.
We'll see what happens.
I did my best to compile it in the time that was provided. So
absolutely.
I think we just have to use scouts on it. If it's on our list and it's on Max's list, we just say it's there.
Yeah.
We both won it on the list anyway, so it's going to be an instant win.
Yeah, we only did it this way to get some of them out of the way, right? So it's fine.
Yeah. So far, great looking list though.
Yeah, I'm pleased with this, and some games that I was like very ready to lobby hard for made it right off the bat. I was not expecting to get an ally from either side of the fence with you with Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. Very pleased I don't have to sell those. Marvel Snap is another one that I was like, great, love to see that on the list. Wouldn't have wasted a save on it, but I'm pleased that I don't have to argue for it. Shovel Knight would have been in my top as well, so really pleased. Very pleased to see some of these. Undertale is another one I would have spent a spot on.
You don't have to do that. It's one of my favorites now, Pete. After me, you and Pixel played it.
Yeah. And then in like Persona 5, right? It's like there's a lot of games on this list I'm very happy to see already. Disco Elysium is one I would have went to bat for. Was very pleased to see that make Steve's list. So yeah, I'm pleased with this. So I think now's the time that we're gonna start going round robin. We'll make our pitches. I'm thinking Max actually just celebrated his birthday this past week. So a big happy birthday to Max, everybody. Make sure you wish him a happy birthday. I think we let Max start. And then I think, if we want to go clockwise based on the screen, I would be second, or we could go counter and it could be Steve.
Convenient it's you next, but that's fine.
Just going by what's on the screen. Just going by what's on the screen.
All right. I'm going to shock nobody here. And my first pick is going to be Super Metroid. Just because for me, this is like the peak of that sort of era of gaming. I've always said that when I play Super Metroid now and about how good it is and how like atmospheric and like big and deep and like how many things it's got going on and secrets to find, blah blah blah. This to me feels like if I'd have played this, or like when this game came out, it was like the Elden Ring of its time, right? And I do think that is a game that has held the test of time. It is one half of an entire genre. Could be said that this is then what inspired Castlevania, Symphony of the Night to then become a genre. I just think this is one of those like top of a generation, standout games that people are still emulating to this day and still holds up perfectly well to this day.
The only concern I have with this, we've already got Dread and Fusion on here. This is a third 2D Metroid. You think it deserves to be there?
That's kind of my one reservation, is that Fusion is already on the list, and I feel like Fusion is in many ways a like successor to Super Metroid.
I think Super Metroid is better than both of those games, and that's why I think it deserves a point on this list, because it is the best of those games. Yeah, Dread does things that modernizes it and speeds it all up, and sort of it's a more streamlined game. But Super Metroid Fusion's still quite linear. It's still like it's very like you stick to the path you're given. There are a few options for it, but Super Metroid is like bang, here you are, do what you need to do, and it just has so much more depth and just way more going on. And I just think it is the peak of the series. I would say. So that's my argument.
We're ending up with what? There's already 2. We'd be ending up with probably 4 then, right? Because we're getting a 3D Metroid pitch later, and we're gonna get one of them through, no matter what. I'm definitely not comfortable with there being more than 4 Metroid games on this list.
Max is going to have to use his locks, or you're going to have to use your veto, Pete, because I'm not wasting mine this early in the game.
How do you feel about that, though, Steve?
I'm not happy with it, but I'm not wasting a veto this early in the game. And I don't have another game to pitch against it that would be similar in genre. The only other one I would have had would have been Metroid Fusion, but it would make the list.
Well, you'd have to veto it.
We could just vote against it.
You could just both go against it, right?
If we both say no, then it won't make the cut right now. We could always relitigate it if we need more entries later, but I think if we both say no, then it probably gets skipped for now.
Yeah, I don't think I can have that many Metroid games on a list of 100 games.
I think I'm aligned right now. I'm happy to keep it open for later if that opportunity arises, but for right now, I don't want to lock in yet another Metroid game.
It's a shame. I mean, I'm tempted to pull my vote out for Metroid Fusion then, if that's the case, and put it on there. But it's too late now. I came with the list.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to use a lock, you can do that.
Tell you what, Steve, would you agree to swap it with Metroid Fusion?
No, I've never played Super Metroid.
Fine, whatever.
All right,
whatever.
So,
you've got 3 locks, right, or 5 locks?
5 locks.
So if you feel that strongly about Super Metroid, use one of them.
I can always use a lock on it later, but I assume so anyway.
Yeah, you can lock it in later.
For now, yeah. If I get towards the end and I'm like, time to start like shotgun locking everything. But
Yeah.
yeah. Go on, Pete. Tell me your first
All
one.
right. Okay. So I'm gonna pitch one that I don't think is gonna be controversial. I want to pitch The Last of Us Part 2.
No, I'm
So
joking. Go on.
the first Last of Us is already on the list. Both Steve and I had that one. I think The Last of Us Part 2 definitely deserves to make it on the list because I think it is one of the more unique narrative structures in gaming, and I think that it has a turn in it, right? That if you've played the game, you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't. That
The
has
early on turn, like the hour in, or the halfway through point turn.
the halfway through point turn. The early one in is I think just an emotional beat, but I think the halfway through turn that we're discussing is one of the most, in my opinion, is I think one of the biggest achievements in storytelling in video games to um, allow you to experience a story in a way that only video games can, that really allow you to identify with multiple sides of a conflict and get a really, really, meaningful look at how honestly how war works, right? And how otherism works and how that leads to violence. And that on any side of a conflict, there are people who are just doing their best to survive and take care of the people that they care about. And I think that that's a story that it communicates in a way that is very, very emotionally honest. And I think that some of the extremes that it goes to makes people uncomfortable. But I think that it does so to tell a story that's about hope and that's about like the inherent goodness of humanity in a way that I think is so, so valuable and really exemplary of what games can do when they want to tell a meaningful story.
I'm fine with it going on the list. It was almost made my list. I just don't think it's as good as The Last of Us Part 1. Especially not Left Behind. I think that's probably my favorite thing that Naughty Dog's ever done is The Last of Us Left Behind. But I'm happy for it to make it onto the list.
Great.
Then it shall go. I can't overturn that unless I drop a veto. But I don't feel that strongly about it. I haven't played it.
It's not worth it. It's too early. All right, Steve, your first game.
So my first game is Hitman: World of Assassination, and this, I guess, technically could be considered a collection because it's Hitman 1, 2, and 3. But you
Yeah,
can
I was
buy it
gonna
as
ask
one
about
game
that.
now.
Not to like give you shit about it, but more just like how do we feel about that as an answer? Do we need you to pick one? Because it's like they did
don't sell them.
recontextualize it.
They don't sell them separately anymore. You can only buy Hitman: World of
It's
Assassination.
essentially live service.
Yeah.
Like it's now just that is the
Yeah.
Hitman.
It
It's
is,
the
yeah.
Fortnite of Hitman, right?
You
They
buy
just
that,
That's good enough
modernize
for
that.
me.
and
That's
then
good
you
enough
can
for
sort
me.
of buy the additional maps if you want to. But I think this is one of the best immersive sims ever made. I think it's funny. I think it's charming. The locations are fantastic. The puzzles that you have to solve are just great. You actually have to listen to people communicating in the game, and the dialogue's really funny. And I have just such a blast with it. And then when they added Hitman Freelancer, I just went back again, and I keep
Yeah.
going back for more.
So I think the fact that this has come up on your Game of the Years before, this comes up a lot when they added Freelancer and it became a whole new thing for you. So I think this should go on the list just because of how it makes Steve feel.
Yeah, I
Oh,
agree.
I
I'd
feel
lock it
really
in.
bad that I didn't let him have
Yeah.
Super Metroid now.
I hope you guys drown in kindness because I'm about to be real fucking nice about all your favorite games.
Good, great, good. Hey, you got a chance. You got a chance to pitch it again. It's not over yet. It's not over yet, baby. Okay.
Is it?
Yeah, I'm good with that one.
Yeah, good.
Max, you're up.
Good. I am up. I am coming in with Near Automata.
Okay.
However you pronounce it.
Sure.
This, had I played it in 2017 when it came out, would have been my game of the year 2017. I didn't play it until the following year in 2018. It is the kind of story and the kind of thing that can only be a video game. The way it tells its story, the way that the meta elements of it are, the way you can do things like you pull out your core. You have a list of chips you can put. If you accidentally pull out your core chip, you die. The game ends. You get a game over screen. There's 26 endings that you get through random gameplay or sort of things that you do. The way it tells it's like you finish the story, you go through the story again with changes, and then there's a third story. Like you couldn't do that really in movies, TV shows, things like that. Um, it just does something that I think is just an exceptional game. that I think deserves to be on this list. I think it's incredible.
You know what, Max? I've never played this game. I have no interest in this genre, but I do think that this genre should have some representation on this list, and I don't think Pete's going to bring much to the table, so I'm going to let you have it on the list.
What genre are you going for there specifically? Just
It's
out of
just like
interest?
it's like Japanese action games, right? They're
Yeah,
not really my
right, yeah.
bag at all.
Yeah.
Not really my bag either. But I'm totally down for this one on the list as well. I know Nier is beloved by so many folks, and I've
It's
heard you talk
near
about
and
it a
dear
lot.
to many people's hearts.
It is
Here it
near and dear.
is.
So yeah,
It was meant to be, you could
I
say.
think
Which
that is a great
Hmm.
addition to the list, and yeah, love to see it.
Oh no! Before we move on to Pete again, I've just realised I've accidentally put my sunglasses up, not my normal glasses. Oh well, let's just carry on. Guess I'm doing the rest of it like this.
Love that. Love that for you. Okay. All right. I'm gonna be honest with you, folks. I was deleting the games that we all agreed on from my list to make it easier to read. So I need to pick a second game. Okay. All right. I'm gonna put forward one of my favorite games of all time, Mass Effect 2. I think Mass Effect 2 is arguably the best game that BioWare has ever made. I think it appears on most notable top 100 games lists of all time for a reason. I think it is one of the best stories ever told in video games. I think it's easily the best game in the franchise. I think it's the easiest game in the franchise to play on its own and have a really satisfying experience. It has a really, really memorable cast of characters. It has really exceptional writing and voice acting. The combat is fun and easy to get into at a low level, but is pretty challenging at a high level. I think this is just one of those games that's the complete package. For me, it's on my top 5 games of all time. It's probably my top 3 games of all time. I think it's definitely a game everybody needs to play.
I think that is it's a unique thing in games to have a narrative that you control that carries on over 3 games. And I think the first game doesn't have that, and the third game, as far as I remember, fumbled the bag a little bit with that right towards the end, that
Depending
some
on
of
who
your
you
decisions
ask,
didn't
yeah,
quite go on there. So I think if you're gonna have a game like this that does something as unique as this, it's gonna be Mass Effect 2. So I'm fine with it.
love that. Thank you for
Cool.
your gracious votes.
Right, I guess it's my second one then, and I'm gonna go for Vampire Survivors. I think this game is kind of really special. It's very simple in its controls, and at first glance, it's like, oh, this is so easy. Like, what am I even playing here? And you're just moving a stick around the screen to avoid enemies. And then you kind of really learn the meta game of, oh, I can
Mhm.
combine this weapon with this, and then I end up being this like absolute godly power that I'm moving around the screen, and there's a million enemies coming at me, and they can't even hit me. And I feel like this was such a game of the moment. It's kind of inspired its own genre now. I really think everyone should check this one out, especially considering how cheap it is on pretty much
Yeah.
every platform. It's like
And there's so much
ridiculously
extra
cheap.
content for it as well.
Yeah.
I think we can probably all say that this defined the first year of the Steam Deck for us, or at least
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
first sort of 6 months of it, or whatever. That this really is like, oh yeah, we got to sit down. If this game was on PC, for example, or on console, we probably wouldn't have played it as much as we did, or if at all. But this was the perfect TV game for that time. And I don't think the games that have come out since then of the genre have done much to surpass it. They've just sort of like done,
It's like
adjacent.
variations on a theme. It's like this is one with a
Yeah.
potato instead. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas this does it in a way that is, it's unexpected. It sort of like, lures you in with like this looks dumb, and then before you know it, you're hooked. So obviously this goes on the list for me.
Yep. I'm happy to echo all of those sentiments. I think it's a very good game. Just not one of my top 100, but a game I'm happy to see represented on the list. Let alone, I mean, we all like it, which is
Mhm.
rare for most of these entries. But it was a game of the year candidate for all of us that year too. Whether or not it was our top, right? We all mentioned it in that conversation. So definitely one I'm happy to see on the list.
Agreed. Uh, Me, I guess. I don't want to blow my soul's load too early, but I want to make a case for Sekiro,
Okay.
which Shadows Die Twice, just to give it its full name. just in case that did show up on someone else's list and we missed it. I
Either of
feel
us has
like
played it, I don't think.
cool, fine, okay. So then I think that Sekiro has the tightest combat in any game ever, and it's one of those like you might feel like the game is beating you down, and in Dark Souls you might remedy that by trying a new weapon or going and grinding, leveling up, and making yourself stronger, or doing all these things. Whereas Sekiro is just like you need to get better, and you can do it, buddy. I believe in you. You just need to parry better, or be more aggressive, or are you using the right special abilities and things like that. And I think that it has such a huge variety of bosses. It tells a full-fledged narrative, which for a FromSoft game is rare, and
Pete
I
might be into that one then.
yeah, he
I
probably
have
would
heard
be.
that. I've had a lot of my Souls friends be like, "You would like Sekiro, maybe."
Mhm.
So,
And it is a game that all of my friends who I've convinced to buy it and play it, my brother and a couple of my friends, have all got halfway through or a bit before and gone, this is too hard for me, but I really appreciate what it does. And yeah, I just think it is incredible. It's rare that I play through a game more than once, and I've played this through 3 times. So
beautiful.
me,
I think it makes the list, Max. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I don't have anything to say negatively about Sekiro. I'm not going to argue against it. I know that it's beloved. I may argue against later inclusions of more FromSoft games since we already have 2, but we'll
do
see.
we have 2? Did Elden Ring make the
Elden
list?
Ring
Elden Ring
made
is.
it. It's our shared
Okay,
Elden
that's
Ring.
fine. We've got enough Souls games on then. We can just leave the rest.
Well, Sekiro 1 isn't a Souls game, and Elden Ring technically isn't a Souls game, so we can maybe we'll talk about this later.
Talk about it later. We'll talk about it later. We'll see what happens. Okay, so that's me then. So I'm gonna put forth my next game is gonna be Super Mario World. So this is my favorite 2D Mario. I think it is. I still think it's kind of the platformer by which I judge other 2D platformers. Right, there are certainly many games that have pushed the genre in a lot of new directions that that do things differently or better than it may be. But I think like when it comes to just really providing that whole package, like this is such a perfect example of the Mario franchise and of 2D platformers as a whole. It's really tight gameplay, beautiful pixel art, fantastic soundtrack, a good balance of being friendly to new players and challenging for veterans, and a game that you can come back to again and again and again and find new things and new secrets to uncover and new ways to progress through the game. So I think for me, like this is one of those 10 out of 10 experiences. It would be on my short list of a top 5. Yeah, definitely a game I think has to be on the list.
I agree. It should be on the list.
Then I
Beautiful.
have nothing to say.
All right, Steve, you're up.
So my next one is another platformer, also from Nintendo, but it's Wario Land 4. This is, I think, the best game on the Game Boy Advance by far. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's got really fun mini games, and then the kind of variety between worlds is just incredible. There's different types of characters that Wario transforms into, depending on where he is. And it's just one of those games that I think you just kind of have to play to really understand it. And it's a real shame that we've never gotten a Wario Land 5. I hope one day we do.
Yeah, I'm happy to support this one. I know how much this game means to you, and I think like seeing how much we all enjoyed the Royal Pizza Tower last year, right? It was a game I really enjoyed, which was obviously one that's a spiritual successor to that in a way. Yeah, there's clearly still a hunger for what that game did, and that like there really isn't another equivalent to it aside from these games that are literally copying it, right? And trying to do a kind of modern interpretation. So yeah, I think that's a really cool one to have on the list for sure. And I know one that would be on your top 10 of all time easily. So
Yeah,
should be on this list, no question.
Beautiful stuff. Look, isn't it nice when we all agree with things?
It's great. It's real nice. Like we're all just being like, isn't this game cool? And we're like, yeah, man, it is. That's cool. Video games are great.
I am going to genre hop slightly for my next one.
Okay.
I think that the XCOM reboot, not the original XCOM, not XCOM 2, the XCOM reboot, I can't remember what year it came out, but it was on everything.
Yeah. I want to say it's like 20. 15 maybe?
It was a
14?
slightly earlier than that. It was like 12 or 13 or
Whatever.
something like
I'm
that.
I'm I'm
I
aware
was at
of the game you're
university.
talking about.
It was
Yeah, yeah.
2012. It's called XCOM Enemy Unknown.
That's the one, Enemy Unknown. Okay. So XCOM is another one of those games that has almost spawned a genre, you could say, of like, XCOM came out and it did something that's probably been done before and it itself had done before in its previous iterations, but did it so well and so iconically that other games since then have come out and been like, "Oh, we're doing XCOM. We're like
I think it brought
XCOM."
it back, that game. Like,
Yeah,
that was a
yeah.
genre that I feel like was kinda like 2D platformers before, New Super Mario Bros., where it's like, "Can you really bring
Yeah.
this out and charge full price for this kinda game these
Mhm.
days?" And it's like, "Fuck yeah, you can, if it's good."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And has these incredible moments of like, you really feel like you interact or you feel for the characters because you name them, you raise them. When they die, you genuinely feel bad that they've died. And a lot of those, a lot of these games that have come out since then, Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle or
Kingdom
the
Battle.
sequel or XCOM 2 or even Midnight Suns in some way, they're doing this, but I think XCOM does it in such a succinct way that I think it's if you have to pick one game in the genre, it's that.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm fine to see on the list.
Beautiful.
Lovely stuff.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I'm metagaming right now. I'm trying to what are the games I can easily pitch to you?
Do
Okay.
it from the heart, man. Do it from the heart.
Let me see. All right.
Listen
Okay.
to your
Okay. I got a
heart.
game I want to put up here. I think this is one that should be an easy sell. I want to suggest Katamari Damacy.
Oh,
And
yeah, that should have been on my list. Yeah, you
specifically
definitely.
reroll is the most recent remake of the original. Katamari is just phenomenal, right? It's a totally unique game. There's no other game like Katamari, and it is exceptionally charming. It has an incredible soundtrack. The art style is delightful. It's literally infinitely replayable. It's one of those games that when I'm not in the mood to play anything else, but I just want to keep my hands busy, I'll boot up Katamari a lot. Yeah, it's kicked off a great franchise.
Na 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 na
That
na
went in my head immediately.
Damacy. I've been holding on to it so that
Mine
Kate can
is
finish talking.
my jump is always Lonely Rolling Star, but there's no wrong pick on that soundtrack. I'll tell you what. So glad to see that was an easy one. Go for it, buddy. Steve, you're up next.
My next one is Diablo 2. It is, I think, the best game in the Diablo franchise. Whether you play the original version of the game or the remastered version, I think you have a really good time with it.
Is there a way to play the remaster version and have a lesser experience, or is it
There
literally
is.
just there is? Okay.
You can play that game with the original graphics, but still have the same modern menus.
Right. Sorry, no, what I meant is there anything in the original that's missing from anything from the new game that's missing from the original? So that's fine. Then I think, yeah, both count then.
Yeah. So
Sorry,
it's the same game. It's just got modern flourishes, newer menus, nicer like keyboard
And
controls.
quality of life stuff.
It can be played with a controller is the biggest thing. Whereas the original is point and click. But I think this is a game that firmly belongs on the list. It's like a game with such a long legacy. I think it's Blizzard's best franchise by far, and I'm glad. I really hope that you two will agree with me and put Diablo 2 on the list.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah, put
That's
it
a
on.
great one. I think it's definitely an iconic game. It's one of your favorites. It represents a type of game that we don't have on the list already. And
Yeah.
I think it's a game that is more influential than people realize in terms of like how popular games like Destiny are now and stuff like that. Like the like loot, like
The
play
loot
with your
cycle,
friends.
yeah.
Like Diablo was the game for that back in
Mhm.
the day, right? It was like you'd get on TeamSpeak and then play with your buddies, right? Like, so yeah, I think that's one that definitely deserves to be on the list.
We wanna capture the full spectrum of gaming, and I think that deserves its rightful place.
Yeah, totally. That's number 11. So we're 10% of the way through our 66 games.
Hey.
So far, it's been respectful.
10%? That's 110 games. So that we're a sixth of the
Oh,
way
no,
through.
you're right. 6 of the way through. I'm bad
Yeah,
at
yeah,
math.
yeah.
That's why I'm a writer.
I don't wanna do that percentage though. That's for sure. Uh,
What's up, Max? What's your
so
next one?
so I feel like I wanna use a lock because I got the feeling when I say this, you guys are gonna go, "Oh, well, I don't know if we can blah, 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 blah." But what I might do is say the word Bloodborne to you, and say that I think Bloodborne. Steve shaking his head. I think that.
Go ahead.
Go on, you're all okay.
Make your case.
Fine.
Make your
Okay,
case.
no, you're all
Make
just
your
huffing.
case. Make your case. We're
You're all huffing.
reacting.
Bloodborne is it stands out among From Software's games as having, like, there's a lot of knights, there's a lot of castles, there's a lot of, like, all these things that like Dark Souls and Elden Ring do. And I think Bloodborne, for Miyazaki to just completely change the the setting and the theme and the atmosphere with Bloodborne, and sort of, the interesting twist from like European werewolf stuff, that then like gothic stuff that then becomes eldritch horror, and then it's a much faster paced game. There's a lot more, it's more of an an action game than it is like an RPG. You really took the wind out of my sails with your sighing, so I think I'm just going to lock this in now just to avoid the disappointment.
Okay, yeah, if you want to just lock it in, that's cool. I was happy to like let you make more of a case for it, but I think for me, my issue is, again, like overrepresentation of one developer, and also that I think a lot of the things that people praise Bloodborne for, in my mind, are also the things that you praise Sekiro for, of having the faster pace of combat, of having, the more like action oriented style.
I just think they're so distinctly distinct,
They
and
are,
they are
but
so
at the end of the
separate.
day, I think Bloodborne is not distinctly different enough from those games on a list of 100 games for my taste.
For what it's worth, I'm not probably going to not waste my time pitching Dark Souls or Dark Souls 3, which were on my list, because I feel like with Elden Ring, Sekiro, and Bloodborne, you get enough of that.
You're not
that
getting another one in without a lock.
trifecta.
Yeah,
No,
so
no, no, no. But
unless
you
you're
get
down for another lock.
that trifecta, I think, of like what these games are. They are three different, almost different genres. They are similar in many ways, but they're so different in their settings and their style of games. Where it's like the range of like magic and things like that in Elden Ring. Bloodborne has like the guns and things like that that are unique to that. And then Sekiro has just the pure swordplay that I think that they do. Each of them deserves their own space on the 100. But I'm
not
not gonna.
disappointed to see them. I think that if this is where we cap FromSoft games, I think that's good.
Okay. Cool.
Incredibly influential developer. They created a whole genre of games that has literally stormed, the gaming world, right? Like Elden Ring was the best-selling game, that they've ever had, and that's because it's been this steady rise of quality. So I'm certainly not upset to see them that represented. I think that's where I want to see it top out. But you got your blocks, so we'll see what you do. I want to jump genres, but I want to keep the theme of very difficult games. And I want to throw out Super Meat Boy. So I think Super Meat Boy is one of the best modern platformers. I think that it has a lot to offer in terms of level of content. There are like literally thousands and thousands of levels to play, if you're so inclined, and I was. And I think that it's one of the like more iconic early indie games, like during that kind of like Xbox Live arcade era, like when indies were coming up. Like Super Meat Boy was one of those kind of forebearers of like, here's how you take a genre like 2D platforming that has been largely forgotten by AAA, and you envision it for a new generation. It has its roots in Flash gaming, which is something that's not represented on this list either. And I think it's just a game that it holds up to the test of time as a game on its own, but also it has a lot of very significant historical context that I think makes it a game that is, fun to play and difficult to master and extremely rewarding in all the ways that a good 2D platformer should be, and is stylistically and mechanically very different than, something like Mario or Wario Land or some of the other games that we've represented, and is kind of like, I think in a lot of ways, the precursor to games like Celeste. So to me, I want to see it in there as like a gap bridge, between those two eras.
I was gonna say that this pretty much is the progenitor of like the pixel perfect, run and die platformer of like you do it over and over and over again until you
Live,
do it, and
die,
then you
play
feel
again. Live, die, play again.
exactly,
Yeah.
It's the beginning of that. So I'm happy to have that on the list. It was definitely a game that I was, I played the original Meat Boy as a Flash game, like you said. I played that at school all the time, and And yeah, I just think it deserves.
This is my favorite game on the PlayStation Vita after Shovel Knight. Is another thing I want to throw out about it as just a fun fact. Awesome. Well, that's great. I'm really glad to see that on the list. Steve?
So I think I'm going to go over to the Dreamcast, and I'm going to say Shenmue. It's a beloved game to me. You can view the stream that I did on YouTube. You're vetoing Shenmue?
Yeah, keep talking though. I just want you to know that.
No, it's fine if you're vetoing it.
No, I want you to keep talking because I want you to say
make your case. Make your case. Try and convince him.
I think this game was one of the first games where you could just go out, roam, explore. It was one of the first games I played that had a day-night cycle where I couldn't get into specific places until specific times happened. And I think it has a place in history. It started out as a Sega Saturn game, it moved to the Dreamcast. I think that game and probably Sonic Adventure really iconify the Dreamcast. And I don't think we would really get much representation for that platform on the list otherwise.
I'm still going to keep the veto. I'm sorry. It's just one of those. This is a harsh mechanic you come up with, Hippie. I just feel like when I think about everything I've ever, when I think about everything I've ever seen about Shenmue, that's 1, 2, and 3. It just seems very boring, and I feel like that sort of, and then it just doesn't appeal to me. And I'm not then saying that I'm just not going to have an opinion on it. It just feels like something that I just don't get, and therefore, if this is a list that represents all of us and me, I'm using a veto. I'm using it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hey, that's the mechanic, baby. That's cool.
Would you have backed him anyway? Would you have backed it?
I would have considered backing it. So I think it was a wise use for the veto because I know it's a game that matters a lot to Steve. So I think I would have been happy to defer to his opinion on it. But I do think it would have been a very controversial inclusion. So I think if you had tried to make a case, you might have won me over. But I think it was a well-used veto. I do.
Thank you.
I think that's one of the more controversial games that would be put forward.
Just wait till the next round. Shenmue 2's on my list as well, by the way.
Oh, okay.
That would be so funny if you just Shenmue 2, baby. What's up, Pete? You gonna call my bluff?
I've got 4 more vetoes, baby.
Okay.
It's me again, isn't it? Actually.
Yeah, it is. Okay, I don't know why I thought it was me.
You don't have 4 vetoes, by the way, Max. You have 1 veto, and you just used it.
Oh, you get 1. I thought you had 5 of those as well.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
You get 1 veto.
Oh well, that's fine. That is fine. Okay, so I want to go for. Let's mix it up slightly, and I'm going to say Resident Evil Village because of all the Resident Evil games that I played, and that includes 2, 3, 4 remake and Village. Village for me is the one that feels like the most modern. Resident Evil 4 is the beginning of that, but I also think it's quite long and there's a lot of it's quite because of the
events and stuff.
Well, they're not in the remake. They don't really have that many quick time events, if any, I don't think. But I think that it's the whole so in Resident Evil Village, it's all interconnected, it's all open. You can come back to previous areas early, and that's that. But Resident Evil 4, even in the remake, is still chapter based. So if you miss something or there's something you're like, oh, I'll come back to that later, and you move on, you can miss it completely until you hopefully come back to that area. So I think Village does everything that Resident Evil 4 did, but in a more modern way. And I think it is such a good every area of the game is like its own subgenre of horror. You have like the big castle where that big sexy woman is.
What about the scary baby? That's great.
Scary baby again. That's like a more modern sort of like, oh, it's creepy. There's dolls in like a haunted house kind of thing. And then there's the terrifying mechanical horror of that big propeller man coming at you in the factory. Like there's a lot of good stuff going on there in a way that I think should be the future of Resident Evil, and I think it concludes the story of Resident Evil 7 really well. The DLC was fun. I just think Resident Evil Village for me is probably my favorite Resident Evil game of the ones that I've played.
Did you play it in third or first person?
I played it in first person because I played it before the third person came out.
I played this game in third person. It's a very good game. It's actually scary, unlike Resident Evil 4. So it belongs on the list. It is a good game.
Cool. I'm surprised this is the Resident Evil that's made it. I thought 2 would be voted on sooner, but hey, there's still a lot of time. Okay. All right. I'm gonna go for one that I'm not sure how it's gonna land. I want to put up Ghost of Tsushima. This is one of my favorite games. You both know that. I don't need to relitigate why I like it too much. I think it is, by my estimation, I think of the formula that people often attribute to like Ubisoft of like, it's an open world game. There's a bunch of stuff for you to do. You're going to check some boxes. You're going to meet some side characters. You're going to explore a historical location. You're going to get a taste of Japanese history and samurai culture and all that good stuff. I think that this game does that formula better than any other game. I think it's beautiful. I think the combat is exceptionally fun, particularly on higher difficulties. It gets really tough and really, really like engaging in like how vulnerable you are and how much you need to be like reading enemies and switching stances and all that good stuff. This game came out in 2020. I've beaten it 4 times since then. There is no game I have played that many times in the modern era, like in that quick succession.
Of all of the big open world checkboxy bloated Ubisoft games, that is easily the best one. I'm not saying that to ride on the game because I like to hate on the game because I like the game. But of all, if we're trying to represent genres as well of that genre that people love, I think that is the best and deserves to be there.
Fuck yeah. Max, you didn't try to get my support, but I just wanted to know I owe you support on a future game. So just keep that one in your
Super
back pocket.
Metroid?
We'll see. Keep it in your back pocket. Keep it in your back pocket. Don't try to push me too early on Super Metroid. When we get a little bit later we'll see where we're at. We'll see where we're at.
That's fine. We'll
see where we're at. Because I know you got other Metroidvanias on this list, right? So it's like
yeah, you could say that. Fair few.
Right. So but just throwing that out there. Very pleased to see that. Thank you. Okay, Steve.
I am going to now pitch Shenmue 2 because I think Shenmue 2 is actually a better game. I played this game in Japanese when it was released on the Dreamcast when Sega was running out of money and they couldn't afford to translate it.
I'm sorry, I got to ask. Were you planning on pitching both of them or is this okay? All right, damn. Okay.
No, I thought that it might get vetoed, and I prefer Shenmue 2. And so my strategy was if I pitch Shenmue and no one likes it, fair enough, I will get Shenmue 2 on the list. Because I do think Shenmue 2 is a better game. It's longer. Shenmue 2 was meant to be 2 games. It was meant to be Shenmue 2 and Shenmue 3. And they just kind of combined it into one. And you got like a little bit in the notebook at the beginning. It's very clear that Sega was running out of money while they were making this game. They couldn't afford to do the English voiceover. They couldn't afford to make the whole game. They rushed it out, and kind of Xbox were their saving grace, who were able to give them a ton of cash to bring over a bunch of Dreamcast games to their new console. But I think it deserves a special place on the list for me in both history, and I also think it's just a charming game.
I know there are other games that I want to veto more than this one, and I am not comfortable wasting mine. So I guess you win.
I see. So now it's just about fighting. You could just say no. You don't have to veto it. You could just say no because I'm not saying yes.
No,
so if you said no right now,
I can just say no.
If you just say no, that game doesn't make it on the list. I just vetoed it in case you were swayed.
Steve, you want to keep in mind? I'll give you a favor if you keep that in mind for me later.
Oh yeah, I'll keep it in mind. Yeah.
I'll let it go through.
All right. But it better be a good game.
I hope that doesn't draw your ire too much, Max. This is not a slight against you. It's I need leverage against Steve later.
But I also think it's worth like realizing this is a list of our favorite games, a good representation of games that we enjoy, and I enjoy this game.
Yeah, I don't care about that.
No game anyone puts forward doesn't deserve to be on the list at all. That's how I. Right, we all pick these games. It's supposed to be for our. Well, hey, I'm not saying it doesn't deserve it. I'm saying that it's already been wedged out by 3 other games in its franchise. And I know it's going to get one more. There's a non-zero chance Metroid is the most represented game on this franchise or on this list. And Steve and I have both played 2 games.
Well, let's see when Shenmue 3
you're
comes
you're
up.
doing all right so far, all right? And you got 3 FromSoft games on there.
I'm having a good time.
You're having a great time right now.
You don't have to worry about Shenmue 3. It is a trash game and nobody should play it.
You're up, Mac.
Shenmue 1 and 2. Okay, my next game. Now, this I think should be quite a nice, easy one because I think it sits perfectly in the middle of the road of its genre and its franchise. Old fans love it because it's the epitome of what they like. The new fans like it because it's it's Pokemon Crystal, right? It's Pokemon Crystal. I think that of all the Pokemon games on this list, I wanted to pick one. Originally, I picked Diamond because that's the one that is most special to me. But then I remember playing the remake of it and thinking, oh, okay, maybe this isn't as all that as I remember it being.
Don't judge Crystal, Gen 4 by the remake. That's there's
no, yeah. But I'm a big fan of Diamond, but I think Crystal, and I haven't played the remakes of. I haven't played Heart Gold and Soul Silver. I was sort of away from the DS at that point.
Sure.
But I think Pokemon Crystal is old enough for the old fans, new enough for the new fans. It's if the series ended there, that would be like the perfect encapsulation of all of Pokemon. And I still think that now it still does things that the new games don't do. So I think Pokemon Crystal, if I had to pick one Pokemon game to be on the list, it's that.
Pete, you got another one that you would pitch against this instead,
no.
you agree with Pokemon Crystal?
I like this choice. I had Gen 2 on my list as well. I had Gold, Silver, and Crystal because I think arguing about the minutia of which one is rarely interesting. They're all basically the same. Crystal is the most optimized version. It has some extra stuff. I'm happy to let that be the pick. I think Gen 2 is my favorite gen of Pokemon. I think for a lot of the reasons that Max laid out. I think it is it has the benefit of learning from the first game and iterating on some of the design that was admittedly underbaked in areas in the first game, and the balancing is better and everything like that. Right? It's beautiful. It has one of the best soundtracks of any video game I would put forward, and yeah, I think it really does nail the tone of the world of Pokemon. It's a little softer than the first game, but not as soft as it became when it became a worldwide phenomenon. And this game was kind of created. It started its creation before that explosion, and by the time it came out, it was as that was kind of, plateauing.
Yeah. It's still got a bit of edge. It's still got like some interesting character designs. It's got some secrets and some mysteries around it.
Good world building. It's got a lot. I could talk about why this game is great for a really long time. Yes, it's on the list. It definitely needs to be on the list.
Stuff. Pete, next up.
Okay. I know this one I think is going to be an argument because I think this was the example I gave. I have Far Cry 3 on my list. I believe Steve has Far Cry 4 on his list. Let's litigate this one. One of these games is ending up on the list. Let's litigate it. I would argue for Far Cry 3. I know that it's the older game, that there are some mechanical improvements in Far Cry 4. There's some depth added to the gameplay of Far Cry 4. I won't discount any of those things. Personally, I like Far Cry 3 on this list because I think it has a better story. I think that it has a more interesting moral question, which I think is something that each game has tried to kind of copy since that game to a decreasing effect every time. I think 4 has a worse story than 3, 5 has a worse one than 4, and on and on.
5's just nonsensical.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
And I think that 3 was a really, really clean set of mechanics. I think it envisioned the Far Cry series for a new generation, and it set a standard that the franchise is still chasing years later. I think that it has a better villain. I think that it just kind of overall does everything that the franchise has now become known for better than any game that came after it, with the exception of the mechanical stuff that I already acknowledged, which I do think is fair, right? Like there are a lot of improvements and additions in 4 that are really cool and welcome. But I think that was also the start of them escalating things and adding shit on top of a formula that was already clean.
Yeah. But the reason I picked 4 was because I think I like the story of 4. I like Pagan Man. I think it's a really cool concept. I don't remember seeing a game where basically you just, sit down at the beginning and when he says, I'm just wait here and I'll be right back. And if you just sit there and wait, that's the end of the game. I thought that was a really cool little Easter egg ending that they added into Far Cry 4. I do think some of the kind of crafting stuff that they added, I don't know. I really like Far Cry 4.
So I have the decider here, don't I?
Yeah.
Have you played either of them?
I haven't played either of them, but I think that Far Cry 3 is so inarguably the more iconic one, and I think it's sort of set Far Cry on the trajectory of what it could have been. I'm not saying that the games after it were all terrible, but I do think that it is. If you had to pick a Far Cry game to play, me personally, as someone who's never played a Far Cry game, I would pick 3 purely because
That's right.
like I say, it's the most iconic. It's the one that people most talk about, and I think it's the game that all the Far Cry games since then have possibly tried to emulate. They've tried to go, right, we need a villain that's the sort of the main character. We need to do this, that, and the other. And I think Far Cry 3 is the one. I'm sorry, Steve. Don't hate me.
You vetoed me. Now you won't let my Far Cry game on the list. What did I do to you, Max?
I don't remember your hand coming up when I pretended to shake your hand on the camera.
I'll shake your hand.
I don't want to do it again because
fair enough. All right, yeah, baby. What's up, Far Cry 3? Let's go. All right, you're up, Steve.
I am gonna go with a game that I don't know that either of you have ever played, which is Hotel Dusk Room 215.
I know nothing about that game yet. You're gonna have to sell us.
I can picture it. Is it? There's a guy wearing red in it, or something like that.
No, it's black and white. This is a game that was on the DS. It's a point-and-click adventure game. They released a sequel, like a kind of spiritual successor that after they went bust. But this would be the first DS game on the list,
What's
and
it
it's one of
called?
those games, Hotel Dusk Room 215.
Okay.
I remember this coming out.
You basically play a detective. The crimes happen. Someone's gone missing, and you have to try and find out what the hell's happened. And there's like point and click adventure puzzles that you have to do. And it's one of those games where you hold the DS sideways like a book, and you see the characters interacting and talking on the left, and you move around the room and you tap items and stuff with the screen on the touch screen on the right hand side. I just thought it was a really special game when it came out. I think it's probably one of the best games on the DS, and it's one of those games that not many people have ever heard of. But yeah, I think it's a game that everyone should play before they die.
When you rotate that DS 90 degrees, you know that game's for grown-ups. That's this. We're not doing kid shit no more. We're doing 90 degrees. We're reading books.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to throw my weight behind this one. I think that this is we don't have a point and click. We don't have a DS game. This is a unique entry. It seems cool. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I'm down.
Yeah. I'm not against it in any way, so I don't see why not.
Yeah, good enough for me. You're up, Max.
Let's. I was going to genre hop, but you know what? I might stick in the same genre and pick Xenoblade Chronicles or Xenoblade Chronicles Remastered specifically. I guess if I had to
point and click adventure, how is that the same genre?
Sorry, I just from his previous one.
Well, yeah.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay. I was I don't understand that at all, but okay.
No. Sorry, from
JRPG, gotcha.
Yeah, JRPG. Yeah. As someone who isn't a JRPG person and is in many ways anti JRPG, I'm not a turn-based guy. Pokemon was the only JRPG I've ever played. I could never really get that deep into anime games or the whole you're the chosen one and then you go out on a small adventure from your village, you leave your family behind, you eventually kill God. That sort of thing always just felt a bit too the same to me. And I still feel like that now as a 31-year-old man when I see a Nintendo Direct and I'm like, oh, it's a Square Enix game. I know how this is going to go and I'm not interested by it. But Xenoblade Chronicles has such an immediately interesting and unique world. You're fighting on the back of these two giants. The combat is almost more like rhythmic than turn-based. It's still sort of rolling around. The world is like huge and gorgeous, and the setting of being on these two giant forms is interesting because you can track yourself down from the shoulder down to the knee, down to the thigh, to the sword that connects the two beasts that died mid-combat. You walk along the sword, and the story it tells of nature versus mechanical beings and the sort of twists and turns and I just think it's such an incredible unique game and experience that even with 2 sequels I still think this is the best one, and I think it deserves place on this list as a rare JRPG for like non-JRPG fans, if that makes sense. It stands out to me.
That's awesome. I don't know that I agree with that assessment of it at the end there, but I love that for you. I'm good with this one.
So are we going with Xenoblade Chronicles or the remastered?
The remaster, because it's the same game, but it's on the Switch, so you can play it on the Switch.
Okay.
These are games you can play, which is why Overwatch didn't make it to the list in any shape or form, because it's
you and I
impossible to play now.
Both had Overwatch on our list and cut it for that reason, because it's games you should play before you die, and I don't know that you should play Overwatch 2 before you die. At least not yet.
You literally can't play Overwatch, and that is the game that I would pick.
Right.
So
yeah, I'm right there with you. Cool. Well, this is great. Another first for a Nintendo franchise to get represented, which is great. I'm gonna keep on that trend because this is a thing I think we need to argue about at some point. I want to put forth Mario Party 2.
No, Mario Party 5, I think, is the better version.
Okay, Max, before we argue, do you have a dog in that race?
I've never played a Mario Party game.
Okay.
To be bothered by it. Which one's 2? Is that on the GameCube?
2 is on N64, 5 is on GameCube. Most people agree that 2 is the best on the N64. Most people agree that 5 is the best on the GameCube, is I think my interpretation of it.
Are there any omissions from 5 that would make 2 a stronger game, or is that just the one that you like best?
No, so they've got different boards, different mini games. They're all just very different games.
Yeah. So for me personally, I think the reason I land on Mario Party 2 is I think Mario Party 2 has the kind of best overall package, in my opinion, of every Mario Party game. It was a regular staple in my, in every group of friends I've ever had. It's been a regular staple. I played it contemporarily on the N64. It was a game that I continued to play when the GameCube came out, and there were newer versions that I liked, but I always preferred 2. And it was a game that when I had a Wii and on the original Virtual Console, it was one of the 2 games that was in constant rotation on my Wii between that and Super Smash Bros. Brawl. I just think it's a really exceptional game. I think it holds up really well, and I think there's a reason that Mario Party Superstars, which was kind of being pitched as this nostalgic best of, had a lot of content pulled from 2.
Steve, do you have a counter for 5?
And in the new game, there is content from 2.
There's also content from 5, and content from 5 also made it into Superstars. Let's just say that some of the mini games came over from the GameCube era. But I think that Mario Party 5 added a bunch of things that I enjoyed. We got the ability to add capsules onto spaces. So if you had like a Lakitu capsule, you could put it down and it would steal coins off someone if they landed on that specific space. I don't think there were Bowser spaces in Mario Party 2 that you also had in. Oh, there are. There was the Battle Royale mode where you could basically team up, and it would be like 2v2 rather than like 1v4 kind of 1v3 kind of thing, like where everyone's playing on their own. And I think those additional modes, along with like a really good collection of boards, like I do think the Mario Party 2 boards are good, but I think, in my opinion, the boards in Mario Party 5 are better. I love the Undersea Dream board. I love the Sweet Dream board. The Bowser board is great. The toy one's great. And also the collection of minigames I just think is stellar in 5.
So here's my thinking and probably my official ruling. Pete came to me with passion. You came to me with jargon, because I didn't understand the first half of your pitch there. So I'm probably going to, and this isn't against you, Steve. I think I'm going to give it to Pete purely because I think his case was stronger, because it was it was more passionate. It was I love this game, and you were like, well, it's got more N boards and T junctions.
It's fine. I can't wait to use my veto on one of Max's favorite games.
You could still lock it in if you want.
No, I'm okay. I'm not that precious about having 5 on the list. I think as long as Mario Party was on here in any shape or form, I would have been happy. I do think as long as it wasn't like Mario Party 8, I would have been fine with it.
I don't feel too evil picking it because it means a Mario Party game got on the list. Because if I had just said I'm not bothered, then you two would have argued forever anyway. So
I think Steve and I are also like in pretty it's like I prefer the N64 ones and you prefer the GameCube ones, but like my next 2 favorite are your 2 favorite and vice versa. So it's like, it's like
I also think if you're gonna play one, you should probably play one of the ones that's on the Switch. Like I do think the new one coming out later this year is probably gonna be my new favorite one. It looks like it's got a really good collection of boards and mini games, but
fingers crossed.
They screwed up Super Mario Party somehow, so we'll see.
They sure did. All right, Steve, you're up. Oh, sorry. This next one will be 22. So that'll be 2/6 of the way through. Let's go.
Oh,
You're up, Steven.
nice. I'm gonna go with Papers, Please. This is a game that just it looks so simple and gets progressively more complex. There are moral choices you have to make. Do I let someone who claims that their wife and child is over the border, or are they going to run past and like have a bomb with them? Or do I risk losing my job to help these people, or do I just accept the fact that I am someone on the border of this like dictatorship who is responsible for keeping people out or keeping people in? And I think it's one of those games where you kind of just look at it and you go, "Oh, that seems simple enough. I'm not really gonna really get into it much." Either like just, "Oh, I'm just stamping based on what they look like," and then it's like, "Oh, now they need a ticket to get in. Now you need to make sure that they've also got like this additional book with them, and you have to read the rules all the time." And so like it becomes more and more complicated. But I think this is a kind of really one of a kind game that deserves to make the list.
I was going to say that it's unique. It stands out by itself as its own thing. There
Yep.
are not paper please likes that you have to pick the best one of. This is just a vision that has been realized in a way that is still the way to play it, you know.
And I think it's very representative of what is valuable about indie games. Like, this is the kind of game that you get when you have a vibrant, thriving indie scene, right? Is like something that is emotionally affecting, that is, like a little complicated, a little complex. Yeah, I love to see this on the list. All right, Max.
Oh, it's me, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, cool. I am gonna bat for a game that I don't think either of you have played, but I think stands out to me as the best exclusive game on that system to this day. Not exclusive anymore, thinking about it. It's Returnal. I think that Returnal, if we're
Cool.
doing genres, I think Hades is the best in that genre overall. But if you're not a 2D person or you want like a more unique, like there's so many games that are like Hades, isometric roguelike games. But I think Returnal does that whole narrative thing uniquely. It does has like bullet hell stuff to it. It has a really interesting narrative, gorgeous, incredible visuals, really tight gameplay and gunplay, and a really interesting story. Really, I think that Returnal is fantastic, and I greatly enjoyed the amount of time it took me in my pants over the Christmas in 2022, I think, to get the platinum. Yeah, Returnal.
I love this inclusion. Hades already made the list. I think that this is probably the most unique other game in that genre. To your point, Housemarque's a really cool studio. Yeah, great. Love it. Okay. I feel like I'm in a spot now where I have some that I know are big swings, and then I still have others that I feel like I can just get in. So I'm like trying to decide where I want to go.
Swing it, baby. Big swing.
Okay, this is a bit of an off the wall point. I don't know if you guys how you'll mesh with this one. I want to put up Guitar Hero 3. So I think that you couldn't grow up during that era of video games and not be a little bit swept up in the kind of peripheral game scene. And I think that as popular as Dance Dance Revolution was, which I think is, what's that called for you guys?
Dancing Stage Euro Mix.
Right, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. I think Guitar Hero is like a little more accessible, right? Because
The only question I've got is how do I play this before I die now?
you can still play it. You just have to buy. Well, there's a couple ways you could go about it. You could obviously buy the vintage hardware, which is still available. But also there are modern games in that franchise that work with the current Xbox, and I believe you can use those controllers backwards compatibly.
Okay.
Is my understanding. There is also a thriving Reddit community still out there that will help you get into these games in the modern era if you're so inclined. I chose Guitar Hero 3 specific. I was kind of between 2 and 3. I chose 3 because I think that 3 is kind of the like apex of the original formula. they had added the boss fights in that, where there were like the guitar solo battles against like Tom Morello and these other famous guitar players. And that was like a little bit like an escalation of the formula. But I think it is like the most they added to it without getting it to the point where it got bloated and there was too much. And, I personally, as much as I like some of the Rock Band games because they have songs that are not in Guitar Hero and some that are songs I really like, I always felt like the non-guitar instruments were kind of half-baked. I don't think that the vocal recognition is as good as something like SingStar. I don't think that the drums are really representative of playing drums at all. And it's also too hard to like play for a normal person. So I feel like that is in a really gross middle ground. And I think the keyboard is kind of in a similar space for me where it feels like if you know anything about music, it's too simple. And if you don't know anything about music, it's too complicated. And I feel like the guitar controllers are really that's the meat and potatoes of that franchise and of that movement. So I chose that game.
Can I throw in it's not on my list, but can I throw in a counter quickly to
Sure.
that? And because my Guitar Hero game was World Tour.
Okay.
On the DS.
And no, that's on tour.
Oh.
World Tour was the first Guitar Hero that introduced the other instruments, but I only had the guitar. You didn't need the rest of the instruments. It was a Guitar Hero game that you could also have drums and whatever else for it, right? Why would Guitar Hero 3 take place over World Tour, which is still essentially a Guitar Hero game?
I think because it's to me 2 and 3 are the most like straightforward of the franchise, and I think that they are the most focused on the core gameplay and not adding additional stuff, whether that's other control schemes that are less developed, whether that was eventually adding new buttons so that you could do like the improvised solos and stuff. I think it was just the more they added to the formula, I think it got bloated, and I think that's part of the reason that it went away is that like you get to this point where it's just there's so much of it and so many of these like additional systems shoved on top that don't really add much to the experience aside from being bloated. So to me, I feel like 3 has a really good collection of songs, and it was kind of the apex of that original formula. So that's why I decided on that one.
I'm going with Guitar Hero 3 because the other one wasn't even on your list, Max.
No, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't on my list. I was just offering it as a counter.
Like why I decided this one instead of one of the other ones. Yeah, I think it's just one of those franchises. It's similar to Far Cry 6's problem, where it's like the most modern version is not the best; it's the most bloated.
Fine, yeah, do it.
Cool.
Is it me or Max next?
It's you,
Max.
You. Me?
Yeah, it's you, Steve.
Okay. My next game is Minecraft. I was surprised it wasn't on either of your lists. I think this is probably one of the. Is it on your list, Max?
It is. On my list. It's on the. I have it.
It's already on there. Okay, right. Well,
I have it on that one list. Yeah, that's okay.
Sorry, I must have missed that when I was going through. In which case, then I will go with Inscription, unless that was on either of your lists. Either.
No, this nearly made my list, but then I didn't add it because I feel like I can only recommend the first third of Inscription with like the furor I want to.
I understand that, but I think that moment when I went into that second act, so to speak, my mind was blown. I was like, what the fuck just happened? And it is such a special game. I really wish there was more of that first third, and I hope that Dan Mullins comes up with some kind of DLC or something.
There is an unofficial mod, I think, that allows you just to play that mode over and over again, but I think it takes out the whole broken card mechanic of you keep bringing back old cards. The idea is you eventually beat it, whereas this takes that away from it, so you are doing it.
It's like an endless mode,
essentially. Yeah. Not an endless mode. You can beat it, but it takes away the you lose enough times you're going to win anyway technique to get you through that shock moment. But I think that I just haven't I haven't looked into it, but I think it's an official mod essentially that was created for that. I'm very happy.
I remember hearing about that. Yeah, I don't know the specifics of it either, but something.
Yeah, there's a character in the game who's a woman, and it's like named after that woman. But I can't go any more without spoiling the game.
And nobody should look up what happens.
Nobody.
Of the game. The first section is the only bit that's ever marketed, and so after that, it becomes a real surprise.
Yeah,
fine.
Happy to see this one included for sure. Go for it. Max?
Oh yeah. Okay, let's go for. I think Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is one of the finest platformers, modern platformers that's ever been created. I think it's visually impressive. I think Retro Studio smashed the level design out of the park. They smashed the story that it tells through its level design out of the park. The visuals, the music, the challenge of it, the way that you can just sort of like, yeah, you can get through to the end of the levels, but to get all of the puzzles and all of the letters, and then to do the challenging K levels at the end of every world. I think Tropical Freeze is such a special game. This is another one that I've beaten a couple of times, once on the Wii U and once on the Switch. This is the game that essentially got me back into gaming when I first got a Wii U, and I was like, oh, what should I get with it? And I got this, and I loved it. And I'd wholeheartedly recommend this to anyone. And I'm glad that when the Wii U release had a bit of like a negative response, that a lot of the people who, not negative, like, that people weren't as hot on it as I think I was. When the Switch game came out, I think it had time to mature. People had time to actually play it because it was on a system they owned, and I think it's gone up. So
Yeah, I'm happy to have this one on there. I did have Donkey Kong Country 2 on my list. I would argue over it, but I know that you really love this game. A lot of other people really love this game. It's not one that I've gotten a chance to really sink time into. But it's definitely like a game I know is very well regarded by folks whose opinions I respect about 2D platformers. So I'm happy to give this one to you.
can I quickly just, in the interest of time, is it worth having a lock round just to get some out of there?
I think let's get a little further
All right, fine.
on the list because I have some locks kind of ready to go, but
Okay, fine.
But again, you feel free to use them as you want. We could always move forward. How about this? You know what? When we get to 33, we'll do a lock round and we all have to use one of our locks. How's that sound?
Yeah, fine. Yeah.
Just to
Go
keep
on,
it
Steve.
fun. All right, cool. So that's me then, right? You just went?
Yep.
Cool.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, you're good. I'm just double checking. Okay, let's see. I think Okay, I think this is a not controversial one. I want to put forth Sonic Mania.
Yeah,
I
that was
think
almost on my list.
Okay, cool. I don't think I need to. I think it's the best 2D Sonic game. I think we need to have a Sonic game on this list.
I had the original Sonic the Hedgehog, but
I also had 2 on my list originally, but
I
guess
think Mania's better.
2 is actually still on my list, but I put Mania forth as the one I think is most deserving.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It feels like a modern take on that original formula and keeps what's special of the original game.
And it has remixed versions of most of the best levels from those games too, so it really does feel kind of like a best of both worlds of like it scratches the nostalgic itch, but then it also serves as like a proper Sonic 4. It's like, just all the characters in it. It's got a lot going for it.
It's a shame that after the whatever that the Plus game. Do you want to choose Plus, by the way, just because it's got everything else in it?
Yeah,
or are you
sure,
happy
whatever.
with the
That's
base?
fine.
Yeah. I think that it's a shame they haven't done more of these, and I think that they should have done more of these because this is, as someone who's been quite down on Sonic, this was incredible. I played it the whole way through.
Loved it, yeah.
Loved it, yeah.
Cool. All right, great. I'm happy with that. Steve?
My next one is Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. I feel like everyone on the planet's already played Skyrim, but not enough people have played Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. And I do think for me, it's my preferred game. I prefer the setting of Cyrodiil. I really like some of the storylines. I love the Thieves Guild kind of story arc, where you eventually become the Grey Fox. And I just think it's so charming. And it really was a special game when it launched in 2005. I think it was one of the first big RPGs we saw on a console. Yeah, we had Morrowind
Western
on the Xbox,
RPGs,
but
at
I don't
least.
think really. Yeah, it never came close to what Oblivion offered.
As someone who hasn't really played much of either of these games, but has friends that have and has seen people play it and has experienced the talking about it for many, many years, I think Skyrim casualized, I want to say. Like it became more console oriented. It became more, you haven't played, you're not an RPG guy, you're an action guy, or you're you like other games in the franchise. And it ditched a lot of the sort of more hardcore, RPG sides of Oblivion. And And yeah, I'm happy with that over Skyrim.
I mean, I didn't put Skyrim on my list. It got bumped at the end of the process, so I don't.
I see.
I would probably argue differently in some cases, but I think I'm happy to throw my weight. We should have an Elder Scrolls on this list, so that's great.
I do have Skyrim on my list as well, but I feel like everyone's already played it anyway. So if you're looking at a top 100 games,
that's
play
fair.
before you die, literally everyone's already played Skyrim.
You probably already played it, so it's also a less interesting suggestion when it's one of the most played games of all time. Okay, cool. Max?
I am going to go with. This is tough. I want to pick one of the Monster Hunter games I've got on my list because I only want to have one on there. And I think if I have to pick one, it's going to be Monster Hunter Rise. It exemplifies. So Monster Hunter World, I think, is the one that a lot of people say is their favorite Monster Hunter, or is like the one you should check out. But I think that for me, moving on to the console and trying to appeal to console players neutered a lot about what I liked about Monster Hunter 4, which is my favorite, I guess, in the whole franchise. However, being on the 3DS makes it harder to play. It's not an active player base. It's the controls are much worse. I think that Monster Hunter Rise.
Is this the one on the Switch?
This is one on the Switch. It's also on PC and
yeah.
PS5,
I played a little bit of this one, and I did like what I played. I do wish it was open world rather than like open areas, but it was good enough. And I do think we need some Monster Hunter representation on here. It's like a massive franchise, so yeah, I'm fine for it to go on here.
Any game in the same genre is just a knockoff of Monster Hunter, essentially, and no one's ever been able to do it quite as good as Monster Hunter. And Wilds might be for you. It's a fully open world Monster Hunter game when that comes out next year. That might be the one that maybe we play that together. Maybe I'll take you out into the wilds and show you what I'm about. Show you my big sword.
Oh yeah, show you how much of a monster you are.
Okay. Sorry, I stepped away for a second. What'd I miss?
Max got Monster Hunter Rise on the list.
Yes.
Great. Cool. Okay, so I'm up. Okay, you know what? Let's do this. We don't have any Rockstar games. I'm gonna advocate for Red Dead Redemption. So obviously Red Dead Redemption 2 is the more modern entry. I think it's also the more controversial entry for a reason. I think I really like Red Dead Redemption 2. Say that one 10 times fast. But I think for me, the first game is just a really, really excellent story. I think John Marston is a fantastic protagonist. And its ending is one of the more memorable endings, I think, of any video game that I've played. It was a game that really stuck with me. I think it defined that generation for me in a lot of ways. It's one of my favorite games of the Xbox 360 generation, which I think is arguably my favorite console generation, if I had to get down and nail it down. So yeah, I think it's very unique in that, there are not really any other genres that explore the West in this way, quite, right? Like we have some cool indie games here and there, but like big AAA stuff that explores this time period is pretty rare. And I think it came out on the heels of GTA 4 and was something that was like really unique and different from Rockstar, and it became the second pillar of that studio, right? Because I think it was such a genre defining game and one that was just so memorable and a game that I think about a lot, and I it's one that like so much of its world and its characters, and not just like the big scripted story moments, but like the small moment to moment gameplay, exploring the open world, some of the small kind of experiential quests and things like that just really live in my brain all these years later.
Yep, I think when I hear all the things that Red Dead Redemption 2 is best known for, a lot of the stuff is superficial stuff, like all the horse escapades, or it's the realism or the attention to detail. Whereas I hear a lot of people say Red Dead Redemption is just the better running around as a cowboy in an open world game, and that's what the game is. I think I really would like to check out the sort of the re-released version of it. I'm hoping that the PC version is true because I'd like to give that a go.
That'd be a real dream.
Yeah, I'm happy for that to be represented here.
Awesome. Steve?
So my next one, I couldn't figure out which one I wanted to pick. So I'm just saying Jackbox Party Pack. And if you want to play one of these, you should just go and look and pick whichever one you want, because it's very difficult for me.
It's really hard to. We had this discussion recently about how difficult it is to pick one. And I think because this is an entire series, you'd have to pick a specific one. And I think that's so hard to pick a specific
I'm then
one.
going to go with
the
Jackbox Mega Picker, which allows you to download that.
Yeah.
And you can play all of the Jackbox games from the single application. They released exactly what we wanted.
Then
I'm good with that. I'm good with locking that one in, just because I think, we're all in agreement that Jackbox should be on the list. I think the Mega Picker is just something that it took them a while to get figured out, but I think like Hitman, it's like that's kind of the de facto way to do it now, right? So
I didn't know that
good with
existed.
that.
That's great. That's really good.
Cool. Max?
Yes. So we are now at 32. So if I give my last argument one, because I've already used a lock, do you two want to go with lock straight after this then? If I give you a...
No, so you go, then I'll go, then we'll do a round of locks.
What about Steve?
Yeah, I'm last in the list, remember, Pete?
Steve's last in the list.
Yeah, but either way, then, well, I guess you're right. I guess that does kind of throw off the rotation. We'd have to wait until the next time it's Max first then.
Okay.
So you want to you want to do your lock now then?
No. I'll give a game now, because I've already given a lock. So if I just give a game, you can, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go with Star Wars Jedi Survivor, because I think Star Wars, originally Jedi Fallen Order was on this list, and I thought a little bit more about it, and I thought about how Jedi Fallen Order, there's a lot of, if you explained it to someone, you're like, oh, it's like, it's a bit like Dark Souls, a bit like Metroid, a bit like Zelda, it's in Star Wars, because it is essentially like a mishmash of those things together in a Star Wars skin. I think Survivor stands up more on its own as its own thing, and then adds in a little bit more like platforming and a little bit more like open worldy stuff and collectibles and things like that. I think the story it tells is amazing. It delves into a part of uh, Star Wars that we don't often get to see, I guess, which is the High Republic. And I think that the customization options are so much better in this one. Being able to customize your lightsaber from the bat is amazing. The different stances they add is amazing. I played for a lot of the game with the two-handed claymore, having a mullet and a mustache. Trailer trash. Kale Kirstis was the perfect way to play. And I think that of the two Star Wars Jedi games, I think this one is the better one, because it stands on its own 2 feet and does its own thing.
Cool. I had the first one. I haven't played the second one yet. I have a lot of interest in playing it. I just haven't gotten to it yet. So yeah, I'm happy to see this one. Go for it.
Play the second one.
I will. Don't worry. I'm busy playing 10-year-old games this year, though. Okay, so what are we doing? Am I doing my lock, and we're gonna just each do one now, or do we want to wait?
Yeah, do the locks now. It's fine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna lock in Pokemon Blue.
Interesting.
Count that as Gen 1 if you want. However you want to slice that is fine with me. So I am locking this one in because obviously we already got Gen 2 in there. I think me arguing for Gen 1 is going to be an uphill battle. That said, I think that Gen 1 is a exceptionally special game. It's a game I continue to go back to, and I think it's obvious, that nostalgia plays a role in that and how much I care about it. But there are dozens and dozens and dozens of games that I have a ton of nostalgia for that when I go back and play them, I can't play through them because I don't enjoy them anymore. And I think that Gen 1 has a lot of unique and interesting mechanical quirks that make some of the team building and combat very interesting. I think it is the best Pokemon game in terms of letting you figure things out for yourself, because it doesn't spoon feed you where you're supposed to go or what you're supposed to be doing. And I think while Gen 2 is really great at doing that in a kind of experiential, secrets oriented way, right? There's a lot of depth to that world for you to discover if you spend the time exploring it and you're rewarded for that exploration. Gen 1 does that on a smaller scale, but also locks that into the entire experience, right? The first time that I played the game, I never found Flash. And I just went through the rock tunnel without it because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And that is a unique experience that you couldn't have in a Pokemon game today because everything is so funneled. And I think that things making a mental note of where there were bushes that you hadn't cut or water that you hadn't surfed through and being rewarded for that by filling out your Pokedex with these rare Pokemon, several of which are not even necessarily super mechanically viable, but that are like status symbols that you took the time to go and explore and find something cool and unique that you could then trade or battle. Like there's just so much there that I would love to see the modern games go back and learn from. Let alone the fact that I think its original pixel art style is extremely charming and again has one of the best soundtracks of all time. So I gotta lock this one in.
Well, that's using the locks for speed out the fucking window. Go on, Steve. What have you got?
You know what? Speaking of great soundtracks, let's lock in Dancing Stage Euromix. It's probably the
Let's go.
probably the absolute best DDR game. It's got a banging soundtrack. You all know what DDR is. I'm just going to get it on the list.
Cool. Max?
I am going to lock in Metroid Prime.
Okay.
I'm not going to revisit Super Metroid, but I do want to get Metroid Prime on this list, and I'm looking it in.
You'd have got that on there anyway.
I think he would have. That makes me think he's going to try to get another one on there, but I think he did that in the wrong order then. So, I mean, maybe not. Okay. Cool. Great. All right. I'm up. Let me see. Okay. Okay, you know what? I'll go with this one. I want to advocate for Fire Emblem Three Houses. I'm a recent convert to Fire Emblem, so I can't necessarily speak to the legacy of the franchise, but I think for a lot of players like me, Three Houses was a really inviting entry into the franchise. I think it has a really exceptional story, and not just one exceptional story. It has multiple exceptional stories because the choices that you make in terms of which house you align with actually meaningfully change the game. There are essentially 3 full unique campaigns with totally different combat scenarios and different characters that'll make up your squad. And then there's also the ability for you to, get into all of the like, slice of life stuff and like recruit other people to your organization. So it's like you're rewarded for doing that kind of like non-combat stuff, not only by having like fun character interactions or cool story beats or whatever, right? Like the stuff you normally get out of a, slice of life element of a game like this, but you also, all of those things meaningfully influence the combat, which is, for a lot of people going to be the meat of the game. So yeah, I think that this is a game that's got to be on the list for sure.
Yeah, I enjoyed what I played of it, and I do think it deserves to be here. It reminded me a little bit of XCOM, but it adds in like that social element as well. So I think it deserves to be here.
Even though I chose objectively the worst story route through that game, I had a great time. So yeah,
beautiful. Which one did you pick?
I went with the red-haired woman, and then sided with her, no, against her when it came to war.
Okay, so you had the church
and
run.
then,
Interesting.
So yeah, but then I got to the end and it was like, oh, here's these characters and like things, and I was like, oh, I don't know who any of these people are, but now I'm fighting them in the final boss. But when I looked it up or heard other people's stories, I was like, oh, they sound like really interesting story.
That's pretty funny.
Missed.
Well, cool. All right, you're up, Steve.
So my next one, similar to Dancing Stage Remix, but one you could play at home with a headset strapped to your face, is Beat Saber. I think this is by far the best VR game. I think it offers an experience you can probably only really replicate in VR, with these like blocks flying at your face that you're kind of slicing out the way. And then the fact that either the PC version or if you mod the Quest version, you can just sideload any track you want. So yeah,
it's the modern example of a rhythm game, really, isn't it?
I think most people would agree this is the best VR game. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
we don't have any VR games, so that's cool.
We don't have any Grand Theft Auto games yet, so I'm going to say San Andreas as a Grand Theft Auto game that I, of all the ones I played, this is the one that for me is just good. It's just good, and it doesn't hold itself back with any online stuff or too much realism. I think this is the perfect mix between it's goofy, it pushes the boundaries, and it lets you do things like customize your character a little bit more.
So I had Grand Theft Auto Vice City. That's like definitely the one I would push forward, but I think
Vice City was almost on my list as well. Like if you're going to push forward Vice City, I will back Vice City.
Okay. I mean, I'm happy to do that. Personally, I really like the setting of Miami. I think that like the 3 kind of major areas in San Andreas are very cool. I think that like all the RPG elements in it are very cool, but I do just feel like the Miami setting and like how tight that game is, I feel like it's kind of the perfect middle point between 3, which feels like the blueprint, and San Andreas, which feels like the escalation and experimentation. And I think a lot of the ideas in San Andreas were better explored in 4. So I would personally go with Vice City.
Sure, fine.
Cool. Alrighty. So I'm gonna go with okay. Here's another one I know that somebody has a different one on their list. I want to go with Mega Man 2. I love Mega Man 2. I think it's one of the best action platformers that there is. I really enjoyed my time with it. It's the only game of that franchise that I have like played as religiously as I played that one. And it was a game that like when it came to the Legacy Collection, it was one of the first games I was really, really diving into on the Switch. And I just have a ton of fond memories with it. I think it's a classic that has stood the test of time, and people keep coming back to it for a reason. So like as somebody who only played it for the first time when they were like 26, it's like I think it really holds up today.
I liked 2. I liked 2 a lot when I played it when I was younger, like in my teenage years. But I had 9 on my list just for those listening at home because I think that 9 is it. It's basically 3 to 8 changed things, added things. 9 took all the modernness of like a game of that era. This came out on the Wii, so it was like a return to retro platforming as well. But I think it took it back to 2 whilst still making it feel more modern and adding things to it that were more accessible. And I think the bosses are fantastic in it. The different stages and the music is all fantastic. I think 2 has a few duds where you're like, oh, okay. Whereas I think 9 is just so tight the whole way through and benefits from an extra 20 years, 30 years of experimentation and sort of evolution.
I'm happy to defer to you on that one since you have more experience with the franchise than I do. I think that's cool.
Cool.
My next one I'm going to go with, which is a game I don't think either of you have played, but I think you both know about it because we spoke about it on either Nintendo Noise or the podcast back in the day, which is Hypnospace Outlaw. And this is a really weird game where basically you are sat at what looks like a computer and you're exploring what seem to be like GeoCities websites, and you're trying to discern and figure out like a load of information and find out what the hell's going on. And I think it's one of those things that can really only be done in a video game. I don't think it would you couldn't tell this same story. It wouldn't have the same impact if it happened in a different medium. And it's just so cool. It's just so cool as you figure it all out.
I bought this based on your recommendation from the podcast. Tried to play it inebriated with my friends, and it was like too tough to get into in that mind space, and never went back to it. But at the time, I remember us being like, "Oh, this is weird. This is so unique." And I think I have no problem with it. I'm not against it.
Okay. I don't have a horse in that race, so that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Max?
Me, Outer Wilds. This is not Outer Worlds, the Fallout sort of spiritual successor kind of thing. This is Outer Wilds, which is the what is the term that people have used recently? Metroid Brainia, in a way where it's like you have a half an hour amount of time. You start on a planet, you have half an hour to go out and explore. At the end of that half an hour, you die, and you have to, in that half an hour time frame where everything gets reset at the very beginning, you have to gain information that allows you to progress further and eventually solve the big main puzzle in this huge universe that you fly around to all these planets that have their own unique, things that happen over the course of this half an hour. And eventually you solve it and you learn things, and it has such an element of discovery that is incredible. It is you get an idea, you're like, oh my god, maybe I can apply this over here, and you piece things together in such a unique and natural way that makes you feel like you are exploring this dead universe and solving the puzzle naturally. And fantastic.
Oh yeah. I'm happy to see that on the list. That's cool with me.
Yeah, me too. This is one that's been on my list to play for forever, and I just have never got around to it.
I finally picked it up and started it this year, and I had an amazing time.
Cool. All right. I'm gonna keep the trend here of interesting indie games, and I'm gonna suggest the Stanley Parable. I think the Stanley Parable is a absolute masterpiece. I don't use that term lightly. I think it is one of the most thought-provoking games I've ever played. It's extremely funny. It's extremely dark. It's extremely it can be frivolous and uplifting and depressing, and it so reflects the gamut of human emotion. And I've never played a game that made me laugh until I cried or get chills so much that the hair on the back of my neck was standing up. It's the only game that I think is capable of really exceptionally threading that needle in a way that is visceral and not just through telling, but through making you feel what is happening through the narration and the way that it uses sound, and it is a truly unique experience. And like aside from the other games by the same creator, there is truly nothing like it. I think it's a game everybody must play.
Yeah, I've been meaning to play it for so long. I think from what you've told me about it, it deserves to be on the list.
The only thing I will say about this is look up nothing about it and plan to play it for several hours in a row and have a complete experience with it. I believe that is the correct way to play it. I don't think you should play it in chunks. I think you should sit there and experience everything it has to offer in one sitting.
Cool. My next one, maybe I should have pitched this sooner when Max pitched Resident Evil Village, but for me, it's Resident Evil 2 Remake. I think it deserves to be on the list. I see this as a very different game to the modern Resident Evil games. They're almost like two different genres.
Steve, that's already on my list.
It's on your list too.
That was a miss from.
Okay, great, lock it in.
Oh, okay.
You can still talk about it if you want, but it's already on the list.
I'll pick a different game to talk about.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I've put it at the top, Pete, in Max's bad thing.
Cool. So we're down to 65.
65 games to pitch. Yeah. I will then pick The Sims 2. I think The Sims deserves to be on the list in some form or another. And for me, The Sims 2 is the best in the franchise that I've played. It brought 3D cameras to it. It allowed you to kind of build more, buy more, do more, added in all the expansion packs. And I think, everyone should play The Sims.
This one was like this close to being on my list as well. I bumped it at the very last minute. The last update I made to my list was when it got cut. So yeah, I think it's representative of a genre that we don't have. I think it is, for so many people, it is their first video game, their favorite video game, whatever, right? Like, yeah, this is one that definitely deserves to be on the list.
Mm-hmm. My next game is Hollow Knight, I think, which is a game that I think fully deserves to be on any top list. It is sort of like one of those standout indie games. The impact of it is still being felt now as we still wait for Silksong with Ravenous Hunger. I feel like Hollow Knight deserves to be on this list.
I gotta say, I don't get the game myself. I've tried it like 4 times.
Same. Yeah.
And I still just don't get it, but I know that it is a special game in a lot of people's minds.
I think the thing that puts it over for me is that it is a game that I have people who have literally no other games in common in taste, both like this game, which I think is interesting. It speaks to that there is something about it that is special, whether or not I've been able to connect with it. So I feel like, yeah, definitely deserves to be on the list. Okay. I'm gonna go next up. This is another game I feel like I probably should have gotten into earlier, but I want to shout out for Dishonored. Dishonored is my favorite immersive sim. I think it is the best game that Arcane Studios has produced as of yet, and you all know that they're one of my favorite studios. I think Dishonored is a criminally underplayed, underrated video game. I think it is one of the best games of its generation, and I think it holds up exceptionally well to this day. I go back and play it every couple years, and I'm amazed by how much it has to offer years later. I think it has some of the best game design in video game history. That's true across the franchise, but my personal favorite mission in Dishonored is in Dishonored 1, which is when you go to the party, and it's got to be on this list.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I would pitch Deathloop up against it as another Arcane game, but I think probably most people would agree that Dishonored is the better game. But I loved the puzzle that Deathloop made me solve.
Mm-hmm. In many ways, similar to Outer Wilds, I think.
Sure.
The next one I'm going to pitch is Age of Empires 2. I think this is the best Age of Empires game in my mind.
It's an underrated genre in the thing as well.
It's just got a remake. It's well worth picking up if you're interested in like what do they call them?
RTS.
RTS, yeah. I think it's one that I think everyone looks at and thinks, oh, yeah, it looks overly complicated, but it does a really good job of kind of hand-holding you through things. You start with just like a building and 3 people, and you build up an empire from there, and eventually kind of crush everyone and destroy the world. So if that's your bag, it's well worth checking out. And also the cheats are great.
Yeah, I have Age of Mythology on my list. We all know that's my favorite. I won't argue against this one, though. I think everybody loves this one, so I'm fine with that.
Absolutely. My next game, I'm going to go with. It's a tough one. Control, because I think Control is my favorite Remedy game. Great story, great gameplay, amazing visuals, like really interesting. The way it sort of weaves together the Alan Wake universe as well. Really, really cool. Cannot wait for the sequel.
Yeah, I've got no problem with Control. I enjoyed what I played of it. It just didn't grab me as much as I think it probably would have if I wasn't playing something else at the same time. Eventually, I do want to go back to it.
So we're getting closer and closer to the end of the list here. We just hit 47. I forgot to call out 44. I'm gonna do another lock for mine because I don't think y'all will let me get it in otherwise. I want to put in Pokemon Heart Gold, Soul Silver on the list. I think that we need to have a Generation 4 Pokemon game. This is personally my favorite. I think that like Platinum is really great and has a lot to offer, but I think Heart Gold, Soul Silver has a few updates from those games that are really meaningful. It has the like world design of the game I argued earlier was my personal favorite. But it has the mechanical changes that are so pivotal to what modern competitive Pokemon is. The physical special split happened during this generation, and that really totally redefined the way that competitive Pokemon operated, which is my personal, like, that's the reason I still play Pokemon as a 30-year-old man, is that I got into the competitive scene, and that was during Gen 4. So I have to have a Gen 4 game on this list, and I think this is the one that I could recommend to literally any person.
Yeah, there's no way I'd have let you add another Pokemon game if you didn't look at it.
Yeah, 3 Pokemon generations. That's wild.
Yep. I mean, hey, we got 4 Metroid games, so.
Yeah, we do.
We don't have a single racing game on the list yet, so I'm going to pitch Forza Horizon 4. I think the Forza Horizon series are so accessible to a lot of people. It's an arcade racer.
Not for long.
You can swap this out for 5 if you want to, but you can still grab a hold of Forza Horizon 4. And it's set in the UK. It's nice to drive around your own country and kind of see the cities that you know and the countryside that you know and have an absolutely banging soundtrack while you destroy a Porsche because you're driving it across a field.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm good with that. I think we would be remiss to not have a proper racing game on the list, and I know you love Forza, so go for it. Max.
I'm using one of my locks for Lies of P.
Cool.
Because while I've had, Souls games, there have been no Souls likes on my list, and I think that this is the best example of that. Non From Software Souls game. They do it perfectly. It's like, it's just fantastic. I think you should play Lies of P if you're someone who is interested in Souls games or has only played the From Software ones. This is the best of the bunch.
Cool. Love that. All right. Oh shoot, it's me again. Okay, I'm gonna use another lock. Because I think similarly, this is one I might have a tough time arguing without you having played it. Dragon Age Origins is one of my favorite games of all time. The Dragon Age franchise is, I think, probably the video game franchise that is nearest and dearest to my heart for many reasons. But Origins is a game that I think is infinitely replayable. I think it is probably the best RPG of its type in terms of like depth of experience and how much control it offers you over role playing your character, because you're a silent protagonist and you have a lot of ability to add a lot of nuance to your character, and that is actually responded to not only just from your companions but in the world itself. And yeah, I mean, it's a game that I've literally played so many times. I've replayed the exact same decisions. I've done alternate runs. I've played every origin that there is, and I just replayed it again a year or so ago. And, yeah, it's just as magical for me today as it was when I played it for the first time. And this is one of those games that when I had kind of had a bit of a lapse in terms of playing like big, meaty AAA, long experiences like that, and I was mostly just playing multiplayer, it was the back-to-back experience of playing Arkham Asylum and then playing this game that really made me kind of fall back in love with video games in the way that I did. So I don't know that I'd be here today if it weren't for Dragon Age Origins.
Cool. Yeah.
That is very cool.
Oh, I would have let you have it, Pete. Come on. It's Dragon Age. Gotta get one on the list. I couldn't decide which one I wanted to pitch of the next series, but I'm going to go with Uncharted Lost Legacy. And I think it's because this is like a standalone game that you can play without having played all of the others. And I think some of the earlier ones, they have issues with gunplay. It doesn't feel quite as tight as the later games. And I just really love the setting. I really love the strong female characters. I think it is a game that kickstarted those like smaller in between games like this and Spider-Man Miles Morales, and I think it deserves people may have overlooked it because it doesn't have Nathan Drake in it, and I think that's a real shame if they did that.
So I don't hate this choice. I had Uncharted 2 on my list. I kind of like that as our pick because I think it's the most standalone of the original set. I think 4 is very heavily dependent on you having played the previous entries to have that kind of legacy with it. Whereas 2 feels like that kind of perfect sequel where like the first game was introducing everything and kind of getting the idea out there, but it's underbaked. 2 is where I feel like they kind of nailed the formula. They nailed the character dynamics. They kind of soft reintroduce all the characters. I think you could very easily jump into Uncharted 2 and have a good standalone experience. And I think, that's true of the game that you put forward, but Uncharted 2 is the game that has like the core characters that make up the franchise. And it's not that I don't like Chloe and Nadine. I like them a lot. But Chloe is in 2 and is a great supporting character there. And I think Nadine is probably the weakest character of the main original cast of Uncharted overall. Not to say that she's a bad character, but I don't like her as much as...
I mean, she literally is. She's a very bad person.
True. And so to me, I think 2 is more kind of representative of the whole of the franchise. If you wanted to get a taste of what Uncharted is, I don't necessarily disagree with your points about that game. But I personally think 2 is the way to go. And I think a lot of the problems with like quote unquote problems with the gunplay are fine if you play the Uncharted collection, which is done by Blue Point, and they updated those.
It's still not great. I did play that collection and it's better, but I like 2. 2 was originally on my list. I bumped it out for this one. I had 2 and 4 on my list. But yeah, I'll succumb to your argument that Uncharted 2 should be the Uncharted game for our list.
Sick. I don't even have to argue. Cool.
Perfect. Okay. Cool.
So my next one is Braid. Puzzle platformers are such a big important genre to me, and this is the first one that really like opened my eyes to what you could do in a 2D game or how you could interact with things that weren't just jumping, and it's clever shit, and I think Braid is important.
Sweet. Yeah, I think this one deserves it for legacy alone. Again, it's one of those like really pivotal early indie games. Yeah, I think it makes it for me. Okay, I'm gonna go with The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. Personally, like you can take your pick with which one you want to advocate for. I'm happy to go with the Nintendo Switch version of the game. It's my personal favorite top-down 2D Zelda. I think it is the most unique game in the franchise, I guess, save maybe for Majora's Mask. I think its story behind it is really cool and how it's this like weird, like out of universe kind of entry because it was made as this like fun passion project, and then it came together to be one of the most memorable games in the franchise. And for me, it is one of the first games that I ever completed. It's the first Zelda game I ever played, and it was one that I always had a very special place in my heart for. And when it came to Nintendo Switch, I was just so pleased that more people got a chance to check it out and see what was so special about it.
Yeah, I'm absolutely fine with that choice.
Cool.
Nice.
I love Link's Awakening. It's such a cool game.
All right. So, Steve, you're hitting 55. We're getting towards the end here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a very old game, but it's still very accessible. It's on the PlayStation Network. It's on Good Old Games, and that is Theme Hospital. I think this is one of my absolute favorite management sims. It's got so much comedy and so much character in there. It's got gorgeous like isometric pixel art, and it's just really, really fun. Like if you're into management sims or you kind of want to get into them, I think this is a really accessible way for you to get into them with a really unique setting. You know, it's not another theme park game. It's a hospital you're running.
Yeah, I think it's great. We don't have one of those represented yet, and it's a genre that you and I both like a lot. So I'm happy to get one on here, and I'm happy to defer to you on this one because I know you love Theme Hospital. I do want to just honorable mention to Tropico and Zoo Tycoon were also games that I had.
Tropico's, yeah, Zoo Tycoon's also great. Planet Coaster is also on my list as a great one. And if you want to play a more modern take on Theme Hospital, 2 Point Hospital is made by a lot of the same team of the original game.
There you go.
My next game is Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask because, like Pete said a minute ago, it's one of the most unique ones. And I still think
got a Majora's Mask tattoo. Lock it in. Let's go.
There it is. Lock that shit in.
Let's go.
I'm surprised it didn't come up on anyone's list, to be honest. Well, I'm surprised this wasn't one of the ones that there was a crossover.
It was one that I had to push out for other ones that I like more. It was not a commentary on that game. It was a commentary on my list not wanting to have more than 5 Zelda games, you know?
Yeah. Well, hang on. So just to double check, you don't have Minish Cap, Ocarina of Time, or Tears of the Kingdom on your list, right?
I do have Ocarina of Time on my list.
Then that needs to go on the list already because that's on my list too.
Okay.
All right, 64 games to pitch then.
Neither of you have Tears of the Kingdom?
No, I think I put Breath of the Wild instead.
You have Tears of the Kingdom? Okay, well, that needs to go on there too.
Oh, see, I had Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask.
Okay, we're good then. That's fine. That's the only other ones missing. Okay, so that means every Zelda game that I wanted to get on the list is on the list. That's pretty sick.
That is very sick. That is very sick. Also means 64 games to pitch, 63 games to pitch.
63, yeah.
Okay, so this is the last 6.
Last 6. So we
have a lot of locks.
I've got 2 locks left, so I'm just gonna lock.
I've got 2 locks left.
I also have 2 locks left. Bam! All right.
Final
sweet.
lock.
We can just pick our games now. Okay. That gets hard though. Now I gotta really pick.
Yeah, I know. This is really tough now.
Okay. I only get 2 more, right?
Yeah, 2 more.
Yeah, 2 more each. And you got a lock. They're all locks. They're all in.
Oh, that's really rough. There's a couple games I want on this list that are not gonna make it.
Okay, I'm gonna go with 5 dates, and I'm gonna lock that one in. Not enough people have played this game. I keep talking about it, and this is like a special game for me. It's a game that was made during COVID, and it's really obvious it is. It's an FMV game. I don't think a lot of people play them anymore, but I do think they're really cool. It's like a dating sim where you're on phone calls with people and like video calls, and you like have to get to know them, or you can just piss them off, which is extremely funny to do. And it's well worth playing with other people, I think.
I almost want to veto this one just to be spicy because it's like I'm not going to use it otherwise.
Can I just say that we just skipped over Pete's turn?
Did we? Wasn't it?
Yeah, I said Majora's Mask, and then you went straight in.
Go on then.
That's okay.
Pete, what are you going with?
Yeah, we can lock that in. Okay, I'm gonna go with. Yeah, I mean, I have to do these 2. I think I'm gonna start with Life is Strange. Life is Strange is one of my favorite games of all time. I think it is a really, really great story. I think the characters are super memorable. It was a game that I played at a pretty important time in my life, and I connected with it really strongly. I have a tattoo referencing it. Yeah, I love Life is Strange. I think it's a really special game, and it's a franchise that has continued to mean a lot to me. So one that I definitely want to see represented, and I think a unique game on this list aside from Tell Me Why, which is another Don't Nod joint, which is also very good, which Steve and I both liked. So yeah, definitely got to get that one on there.
Okay, so now it's me again. I'm going to use my penultimate lock on a game that I think everyone should probably experience, but maybe hasn't. Crosscode. I'm a big fan of Crosscode. I feel like it's like top-down Zeldas, but like in a more, I don't know, modern, like, so for top-down Zeldas on like the SNES, okay, for Mega Man has Mega Man X. I feel like top-down Zeldas has Crosscode as it's like a more like sci-fi jazzy take on it. Great puzzles, great story, great characters, good 70 hours of gameplay. Fantastic.
Shit. Okay. Steve, do you have your last one ready?
It's not the last one. We've got 2 each left, haven't we?
Oh, you're right. Okay. I'm not screwed then yet. Okay, I got a little bit more time. Wait. What is it? 63 we have?
Yeah, so it's you, then me, then Max.
We each get
and...
one more. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, then that makes this a little easier. I'm gonna say my next one is Spider.
It's got to be up to. So there's only 3 games left.
Yeah, 3 games. No, it's 4 games left after. So this is
4 games left. Yeah,
Pete's got 2. I've
Yeah,
got
I get
one more.
Oh, okay, fine. All right, fine.
So I'm gonna go with Spider-Man 2018. So I technically don't have one more. I only have one more lock. So I'm not gonna lock this one in yet. I'm gonna try and sell you on it. I think this is the best Spider-Man game ever made. Spider-Man has a really long history in video games. Many of them are great. Many people like them a lot. I think this is the game that most realizes the best version of what that is, which is having a fun open world version of New York, a game that has a unique take on Spider-Man's lore while also like honoring it and understanding the history and being able to like connect that for longtime fans. But also be presented in a way that if you don't have any relationship to Spider-Man, you can jump in and this can be your kind of inroad. It represents both Peter and, set up Miles Morales to be relevant, which is really cool. And I think established that kind of new dynamic that we see now where like Peter's the teacher and Miles is the mentee. It hits all the right boxes for me. I think it's a fantastic game. I think it's one of the best games on the PS4. Yeah, you got to play it.
Cool. Yeah, I really like Spider-Man.
Best superhero game, save for maybe Arkham Asylum, which is already on the list. That's the other thing I'd say.
Is it me?
Yes, you. Yeah, go on.
Sweet.
I'm going to go with Blade Runner, which is a 1997 point-and-click adventure game.
Cool.
And it also got a remaster by Night Dive in 2022 that you can play everywhere. It's on every console and on PC. And it's a really fun one. It's a different character to the movie. They call this a sidequel event. At certain points, your character will kind of intersect across the storyline that's going on in the movie, but you are a separate Blade Runner. If you like the movie, if you like point and click adventure games, you definitely should check out Blade Runner.
That's awesome. I love it.
Very cool. Me again. I'm 50-50 here, so I'm just going to pick one, and I'm going to say my last one, last lock, last pick, Tunic. Because I think it's... No, I'm respecting the opinion of the board. Tunic is one of those games that when you play it once, you're armed with knowledge that it blows your mind multiple times through the story, and when you go to start to play it again, you're armed with that knowledge for the rest of the game. But unlike Outer Wilds, where once you've solved the puzzle and the conceit of it all and you've worked it all out, there's no need to go back. Whereas Tunic, you can go back, and by knowing that stuff that you learn later in the game, early in the game, you can take different paths and speed run, and the mechanic with the flip book, the book of rules, is very, very clever. So yeah,
cool. It's one that I've wanted to check out for a while. I hear mixed reviews, like it shouldn't be Soulsy combat. They should have just went with Zelda combat, but
I think it's a good mix between the two. It feels like Zelda, it's just challenging like Souls. So,
Pete, this is the last game for the list. No pressure. This is the final game that we say is the 100th game you should play before you die.
I am so torn. There are a few franchises I really want to see represented that are not on the list yet, and I'm thinking about where that line is for me.
And I've still got a veto left. It's great.
Okay, I think that in the spirit of answering this question, I'm gonna choose Pikmin 4.
Okay.
Because I think there are a few other franchises on this list that I really wanted to see represented. Stuff like Halo, stuff like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, games that have been very important to me. But I think Pikmin checks all those boxes for me, and it is extremely underappreciated. I think as far as Nintendo franchises go, it is probably the best Nintendo franchise with the least fanfare, right? You probably would have given that to Metroid up until Dread, but I think Metroid has cemented itself as an A tier. And I think Pikmin 4 is the first game where it's really flirted with that, where the broader community has gotten to play it, where it spent time with it. I remember people cheering for it at the Game Awards just because it got mentioned. I think Pikmin is a franchise that is on the rise, but it has deserved to be an S tier franchise for as long as it's existed. And I think 4 is maybe not my personal favorite, but I think that, which would be 2 maybe. Jury's still out on that one. I think 4 is the best mix, where it combines kind of all of the things that have worked in every previous game. If you like the really aggressive time centric mechanics, they have the Olimar backstory that you can play. If you want that more like chill, experiential, exploratory experience like you got in Pikmin 3, that is kind of what the overworld experience is. And you have that ability to like break up your group using the dog the same way that you did in 2 and 3. But the dog is also a really cool new mechanic that I think makes the game more. It's one of the many things that make it more accessible, because Pikmin, I think part of the reason it struggled to connect was because it was so freaking difficult. And I think this game compromises on some of the things that make it intimidating without moving away from the core of the game. So as much as I love these other franchises that I would love to shout out, I think Pikmin deserves the nod. I think it's a game that really, like, if more people tried it, they would like it and they would connect with what's special about it. So I think, yeah, definitely a game you should play before you die.
Cool. I like this list. This was good.
Good list.
It's a really good list. Yeah, I mean, save for a couple personal favorites that didn't make it on here, I'm very satisfied with what we got.
Yeah.
Too much Pokemon, but other than that,
I think so.
okay.
Can we is it worth me quick firing through the list now with the speed that I can?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. So, in no particular order: Balatro, Bioshock, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Metroid Dread, Stardew Valley, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, Super Mario Odyssey, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Crash Bandicoot, Disco Elysium, Doom 1993, Fallout 4, Horizon Zero Dawn, Left 4 Dead, Persona 5, Tell Me Why, The Last of Us, Undertale, Jeweled, Elden Ring, Hades, Metroid Fusion, Minecraft Portal, Pokemon Go, Batman Arkham Asylum, Celeste, God of War 2018, God of War Ragnarok, Kingdom Hearts 2, Marvel Snap, Spyro the Dragon, Super Mario Smash Bros. Ultimate, Shovel Knight, Resident Evil 2 Remake, gotta catch 'em all. The Last of Us Part 2, Hitman, World of Assassination.
Oh, you should have wrapped it!
Hitman, World of Assassination, Nier Automata, Mass Effect 2, Vampire Survivors, Sekiro Shadow Dies Twice, Super Mario World, Wario Land 4, XCOM Enemy Unknown, Katamari Damacy Reroll, Diablo 2, Bloodborne, Super Meat Boy, Resident Evil Village, Ghost of Tsushima, Shenmue 2, Pokemon Crystal, Far Cry 3, Hotel Dusk Ruin 215, Xenoblade Chronicles Remastered, Mario Party 2, Papers, Please, Returnal, Guitar Hero 3, Inscription, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Sonic Mania Plus, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, Monster Hunter Rise, Red Dead Redemption, Jackbox Mega Picker, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Pokemon Blue, Dancing Stage Euromix, Metro Prime, Fire Emblem 3 Houses, Beat Saber, GTA Vice City, Mega Man 9, Hypnospace Outlaw, Outer Worlds, Stanley Parable, Sims 2, Hollow Knight, Dishonored, Age of Empires 2, Control, Pokemon Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Forza Horizon 4, Lies of P, Dragon Age Origins, Uncharted 2, Braid, Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, Theme Hospital, Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, Life is Strange, 5 Dates, Crosscode, Spider-Man, Blade Runner, Tunic, Pikmin 4. That is 100 of our games you must play before you die.
What a list, everybody. We did it.
What a list. I feel
fantastic
guilty as fuck for using the veto when none of you guys use your vetoes. I feel so guilty, but also I don't care. So
I think it was the right call. I think he got the game he liked more on the list. It kept it interesting,
I like Shenmue too, but yeah.
So it's no great loss. No great loss.
Definitely
right?
not.
I'm really pleased with this. Yeah, I think this is a great list. I think it's very representative of not just our individual tastes, but also I think just like the spectrum of games. There's a lot of really good stuff here. I think regardless
we're gonna. Sorry, come.
No, good. I was just gonna say I think regardless of your taste, there's something for you here.
Yeah, I see what we're going to do is we're going to wait like a week, post this list on Discord, and we'll let people pick at it, argue over it, and we'll see what happens after the fact. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think I would love to follow up on this in some way. I think it would be really fun for us to be forced to then rank these games and put them in like a ranking order. I think that would be cool. I think we could do like a March Madness bracket, which would be insane. Just because how cool would it be if like one of the games we all agreed on was matched up against like, this other really great game that we all agreed on, and then you have to like eliminate one of them in the first round. It's like there's so much fun you can have with that. So I'd love to get the community involved, get you guys voting on it. So let us know what you want us to do.
I don't think we have time for you to explain what the fuck March Madness is, but I say we quit while we're ahead and
let's do November nonsense instead. That sounds
yeah,
could be good,
guys.
Could be good.
Happy 150.
Happy 150, gang. I want to thank both of you for all the good times and for being on this incredible journey together. And a huge thank you to everybody in the audience for tuning in every single week. Some of you being Patreon producers since the very beginning is absolutely incredible. So yeah, here's to 150 more of these guys. It's been a great ride, and we're not stopping anytime soon.
Yeah. See you on episode 200.
Yeah. Well, no, we'll see you on episode 150. Make sure you tune in next week. We got something cool planned. I promise.
You watch every episode. Yeah.
Watch every week, of course. How could you miss it? All right. Well, for the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. He's been Max. We've been the FlipScreen Games Podcast, everybody. Here's to another 150. We'll see you next week. Woo!